WIBC HD3, W228CX, Indianapolis.
It's Kevin and Query.
I throw, you catch. It's not that hard, okay? All right, get the out of here.
I'm going to talk a lot about drills and fundamentals.
Watch it, watch it, watch it, watch it.
On 93.5
Watch it.
and 107.5.
Boom, baby.
The Fan.
Win today.
Oh, come on.
They're singing Go, Cubs, go. Go, Cubs, go.
Makes me want to puke. Well deserved, by the way.
Here's
Mark.
Bellinger, RBI single his first time, man at third.
You got a 5-minute intro for today's show?
Fly ball, right field, way back, look out!
Is that run number 17, 19?
What a thing of beauty that was last night, right, boys? Good game? Good
Any
game,
more
right?
frustration for an MLB fan base when your team doesn't do anything of substance at the trade deadline and then they give up a 20 spot on the same day?
I think that's nothing but optimism at that point, right?
I would think
can only go up.
Giving up a 20 spot in a game, like the equally frustrating thing will be, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if Chicago comes out now and has like a 1-run game and gets beat 5-1, and then you're like, wait a minute, like you were saying, Mark, save some of those runs.
Yeah,
right?
That's all right. I enjoyed last night.
Harry Carey used to have a saying, like if somebody hit a long fly ball to deep center and it would fall short, Harry Carey would say, "Oh, one more biscuit for breakfast," and they'd hit a home run. My mom, as a diehard Cubs fan, sent me, and my mom, as a diehard Cubs fan, either has never accepted or not totally grasped that I'm actually a Reds fan. But she texted me last night, well, the Cubs certainly had their biscuits for breakfast, but they need to save some of those runs for tomorrow.
Oh, my gosh. That is an understatement, to say the least. Good Wednesday morning to you. We are in studio as the Colts have an off day here. They are a week into camp. They'll get back to practice tomorrow morning. It is a 9 a.m. practice tomorrow, so I know 10 a.m. has been the typical start time for Colts training camp. But if you're headed out there, I want to say of the final 4 morning practices, I think 3 of them start at 9 a.m., so certainly keep an eye on the schedule for those that are heading up to Westfield. We will have Reggie Wayne join us coming up at 9 o'clock. And Bob Kravitz at 9:30, so pretty busy 9 o'clock hour. Feels a bit odd to be in studio, though.
I was trying to think. I was like, when was the last time I saw you guys?
You know what?
It's been a while.
Based on that, I have something for you guys. Because it's been this long since the 3 of us have actually been here together, because we've either been at training camp or Mark's been on one of his 64 days of vacation. I can't remember which of you guys was blueberry and which is maple.
Oh, I was maple, for sure, yeah. So this is from Canada?
Yep.
Thank you.
Straight from Roots, Canada. Mark, you got the blueberry, Mark?
You gave me the blueberry, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, another one? Okay.
Hold on.
Whoa.
Jake, thank you.
Double mints.
These are the Roots Canada, which is Roots is like Gap meets Urban Outfitters meets Abercrombie, if that place is still around. So it's a clothing store in Canada, but they have these little mints that are maple flavored, and then in the case of what Mark got, maple blueberry. They taste like blueberry pancakes. But they're actually pretty good mints, right?
Yeah, they're very good.
So I brought those back for you
The
guys.
girls
And I've
like
been
it, too.
sitting on them forever, so my apologies.
And now you're Nashville bound this weekend?
Nashville this weekend, and then, as a matter of fact, on Friday, thank you for the segue, Kevin, Friday night, or actually Friday from 4 until 6, I'll be at the Advanced Auto Parts on Crawfordsville Road. Race simulator will be there. You come in, you do a race simulator, which is super fun, and you get tickets for the weekend after that. So the Brickyard IndyCar double header, triple header if you count Xfinity as well. We'll be giving away tickets on Friday from the Advanced Auto Part on Crawfordsville Road in Speedway. Thursday night, so this Thursday, so that's this Friday. Thursday night, I'll be waving the green flag to start the 317 run. 1,600 runners have signed up. Free beer afterwards for the run that begins on Mass Ave.
Nice.
So that'll be fun on Thursday night. They asked me if I wanted to do it. It's 3.17 miles. And I said, you know what? I gave myself the convenient excuse. I've got my follow-up with Mottman today. I don't think I should push the heart too hard, right? That sounds sufficient.
Yeah.
Are we back at camp on Friday?
No, just Thursday this week.
Just Thursday.
The rest of this week, yeah. Friday is an off day. They'll go Saturday night, Sunday afternoon. And again, I'm sure I'll say this every day between now and next Saturday. Can you believe they're going to play a preseason game a week from Saturday?
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Does Anthony Richardson play a lot in the preseason?
Probably needs to, right? Doesn't it feel that way?
Yeah, I'm super curious how that is handled, how they go from the joint practices to the preseason games. I know past precedent for a lot of teams around the NFL is you don't really play your starters much after those joint sessions, but how Shane Steichen handles all of that is certainly an unknown, and I'm very, very curious about. Again, Reggie Wayne going to join us 9, Bob Kravitz 9:30. Certainly a ton of Colts conversation. Jake, I did think yesterday was the shakiest we've seen from Richardson. He took all 18 starting reps. He was back to practice after the nasal.
And I was wrong
surgery.
about that. I didn't think there's any way he'd be back that fast. I was wrong there, but this is how it's going to be, is it not, Kevin?
Yeah, yesterday looked like a very rookie 21-year-old day. I don't know. Maybe he wasn't used to breathing that well.
What about him looked shaky?
Well, just timing and accuracy is probably the two most frequent things. Gardner Minshew, I just think there's a different rhythm with him, and the timing of it is probably the thing that separates them the most. Certainly Richardson still had throws that you really sit there and say, okay, that's what you are trying to get more consistency out of. I think so much of this question is going to come down to this, and I guess this is in regards to week 1. Are the Colts going to play it as what gives us the best chance to win in September, or are they going to look at things through a big picture lens?
It's got to be the latter, right? That's going to be...
Now, is that your opinion, or is that what you think they will do? Because that is kind of my opinion, too, but...
I think that's what they will do.
So you think Richardson is the week 1 starter?
Yes. Here's the thing. I actually believe this. If you're Shane Steichen, I guess the better question would be this, Kevin. Who gets that final say? Who makes that call?
I'd like to think it would be Steichen. I mean, are we
I'm
still
not
meddling here?
In no way, shape, or form am I insinuating that people are on 3 different pages. I have no reason to believe that. Or 2 pages. I have no reason to believe that. But the reality is, of the 3, Shane Steichen would be the one that would be the most likely to be in win now mode. Ballard and Irsay are in build future mode for sure. I could see Steichen being like, look, I'm a new head coach. Like, I want to win games. I want to develop a winning culture. I want to show guys what winning means. Whereas I think Ballard and Irsay are like, so I can't speak for what Shane Steichen's mindset is, but I would think that Ballard and Irsay's mindset is, we've been through the whole, we're going to try to win now mode. This is a total reset. We have hit the volume button and the side power button simultaneously and waited for the screen to go black and then for the little apple to reappear to reboot everything. That's what they're doing. So based on that, I could see them saying, we're not worried about whether we win the difference between 2 games and 7 games this year. We are worried about developing our quarterback.
I mean, that's the right thought. I don't know if, again, it's universal among those 3, to your point. And, boy, when you hear about Chris Ballard and, he'd have more eyes to the future, it's like, gosh, that dude's got the longest leash of any GM in modern NFL history with how his resume looks now, 6 years into it. The other question I think it's going to boil down to with Richardson and Minshew, and I try to provide this context in the daily recaps I do from camp on 1075thefan.com. The 2 of them, Minshew and Richardson, are in just 2 different worlds from an efficiency, completion percentage standpoint. I want to say Minshew's at like 80% so far, and Richardson's at like 54%. I mean, that is a massive difference. The question becomes, will you look through the big picture lens, and do you feel like Richardson's got more triples and home runs in him, whereas Minshew's got more singles and doubles? And can the big plays offset that? And I think the other thing to mention, too, this atmosphere is supposed to cater the better thrower of the football because you got to wear a red jersey. So Richardson's running element to him. Sure, you see him make some plays with his legs, but you still can't tackle the dude. And for a guy that weighs 250 pounds, it's going to be pretty hard to tackle him. So, once you get into the live preseason settings, each of the next 3 Saturdays, starting a week from Saturday, that's when, or I guess the final preseason game's on a Thursday, that's when you're going to get a little bit more of a, okay, now Richardson's in his best element. Whereas right now, this is probably Minshew's best element.
Minshew hasn't been, I haven't seen a lot of conversation from Minshew. But, Kevin, I think it's worth repeating or going back over again. Do you believe that Minshew came in with the understanding and the immediacy of knowing that primarily it was going to be, at some point with certainty, handed over to Anthony Richardson?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, he wasn't born yesterday. Yeah. His contract says that, Jake. His contract has I want to say it's like a $4 million difference based off playing time incentives. Basically, the unknown was there of when they signed him in March. We don't know who we're drafting necessarily. And we might need you for 17 games. We might need you for 17 snaps. So, yeah, we're going to bring you in here. But there is an unknown. There was kind of a cool moment, I thought, at the end of practice yesterday where Richardson's family, I feel like they've been there every single day. It looks like the little brother's going to go to Westfield based off his apparel. I was thinking, what? Could you send him to Zionsville? Get him and Hilton, Eugene Hilton for a year or two?
Well, Eugene Hilton's kid is he's been in high school for like 7 years, it feels like. Or he's just been on the radar that long, right?
Yeah, he's just I think he's just going to be a junior. So I thought, Richardson's little brother comes to be a sophomore, and boom, all of a sudden you got little Richardson to little Hilton.
How crazy is that to think that you're going to have a high school kid walking around whose brother is the starting quarterback of the. I mean, I know that it would have happened. Jeff George had older brothers, not younger. But I mean, can you imagine like your buddy at school, and you're like, oh yeah, his brother's the starting quarterback of an NFL team that's on ESPN every night.
Easy to make friends.
You think?
But Richardson's family was in, afterwards saying hi to him, and then all of a sudden Gardner Minshew comes over, and like they want a picture with Gardner. Richardson's family.
Oh, yeah.
It was just kind of a funny moment of like you felt like you were watching like, hey, we just wrapped up the big travel baseball tournament. Let's all take pictures with each other here.
I mean, we make a joke out of Gardner Minshew as Uncle Rico, but in that situation, he's kind of the Uncle Rico, right?
And again, their relationship dates back even before they both became Colts. And I do think there is kind of a genuine nature to certainly Richard. There are moments where I'm reminded, Jake, that like Anthony Richardson is still 21 years old, barely 21. That was one of them. His play at practice yesterday was one of them. And then his comment after practice, I was asking him because he was walking over to the tent, and I'm like, not to get too personal, I'm like, he looks bigger to me than he did back just even a couple months ago. And so I said to him, I'm like, what was your playing weight at Florida, and what are you at now? He said at Florida he was around 240. Now he's in the 248 to 250
And I wonder,
range.
is that good or bad?
So I asked him, I was like, is that planned? For a lot of these guys, it's planned. Bernard Ryman put on a lot of weight after year one. There are a litany of players that certainly, fluctuate with their weight planned in between seasons. And Anthony was like, oh, no, that's not planned. That's just all body muscle and mass of, like, just me growing. And it's like, well, hell, I mean, I guess he was only 20 years old last year. And now he's 21. Like, his body is even still growing.
Here's the thing, though. Again, this is going to sound like I'm being a natural cynic. That's not the case at all. I'm simply curious because I saw that, and I'm like, well, I mean, there are some guys that once they go through the combine and they go through all of that, and especially, and really at no fault of anybody's, I think there are a lot of guys, Kevin, that when they get drafted, then they go on the media tour and they do all that, and it's like St. Elmo, and then you're doing this, you're doing that, and guys just naturally, organically gain 5 to 10 pounds right off that. And that was my first thought, was like, well, wait a minute, like, is he gaining weight the way that, like, you or I would, as opposed to muscle mass? Because one would think he had to be on a pretty the workout regimen in the NFL, I'm sure, is in the nutrition and everything would be superior to that of a college program, but it's not like he was playing at Tarleton State, right? I mean, he was playing at a place where I'm sure he was they were doing a pretty solid workout. But
yeah, I genuinely think it's just like, I mean, didn't Paul George grow a ton kind of in that same age range?
Yeah.
I almost think that's the case here with Richardson.
How old were you when you had your growth spurt? I
feel like it was like right around 8th grade, freshman year. I grew to about like 6'1", 6'2", and for the most part have been right there. I think I'm now like 6'3". For the most part, it's
so
been
I was always
right around there.
I never really. This is going to sound crazy. I never had a growth spurt. I mean, I'm 6'4", but I was always. I grew at an even pace. I was always the tallest kid in my class. Always. Like it wasn't. You know how sometimes you hear about guys that it's like, oh my gosh, he left for the summer at 5'8" and came back 5'11". You know, whatever. That I never had that. Thank God. That would have been terrible. Larry Bird, that happened to, right? Didn't he grow like 7 inches in one off season or
yeah,
one
you always
summer?
hear like about the Anthony Davis, like his junior year of high school, went from like 6'2" to like 6'9".
Yeah, I mean,
that does sound miserable. I guess it worked out for him.
Yeah, to say the least, right? Mark, what about yourself?
You're
still waiting on it,
Still
right?
waiting, yeah. I haven't gotten it yet. Looking forward to it, though. It should be very exciting.
Puberty on the horizon for Mark Dykton. The Colts did make a veteran move on their O-line yesterday. We'll touch on the new Colts offensive tackle here a little bit later in the show. We are a week into Jonathan Taylor on the physically unable to perform list. Ian Rappaport from the NFL Network did have a slight update on things with Taylor. We'll play that audio here a little bit later. It is reaching one of those points, Jake, and I still think we're probably 7 to 10 days away from it, but it's August 2nd. If we're sitting, let's just go 10 days out. We're sitting here on August 12th, and Taylor is still on that PUP list. Jake, that's now 9, maybe 10 months since he's last participated in a football activity. Like, if he's going to play this year, I mean, you get to August 12th, you're less than a month away from the start of the season. So I feel like in the next week and a half, you now start to get to some, not necessarily hardcore deadlines contractually, but more of like, wow, is this injury situation, and I say that in quotes, is this going to force him to miss time? I mean, wouldn't you think the guy needs a month? 3 weeks to ramp it up?
I mean, yeah, you would think, right?
After missing 10 months. Because he missed the final 3 games of last year. We know he obviously had that nagging ankle injury for probably, 75-80% of last season. But I tried to ask Shane yesterday, we're a weekend to Taylor on the PUP list. Is he any closer to returning? And Shane Steichen is not in any mood to answer those questions.
Okay, here's the thing, Kev. Do you remember, and I think it's easy to forget this, do you remember early in the tenure of Jonathan Taylor? And I'm talking first quarter of rookie year. Do you remember how slow it was to get him out of the gate? Like,
yeah, those first couple months, it was, it was pretty.
I mean, I think there were whispers of like, did they just get another Trent Richardson? Like, why is he not? And what was the kind of the conversation at the time, or the explanation at the time? The explanation of the conversation was that it was just a matter of, if you recall, it was like, well, it was taking him a minute to see the holes and to see plays develop. And once that happened, he was a dynamic player, no doubt about it. But there were a lot of times early in his rookie year where he was running into gaps that weren't there, or choosing the wrong cut to make. Understandable. You're a first-year NFL player. And everybody's like, hey, what's going on here? And then literally the light switch went off. He had to learn his timing. He had to learn his instinct and his reaction. Do you lose that by being out of it? I think possibly you do. And you have to reacclimate that. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's like riding a bike. I don't know. But that would be my concern, is if you go back to as good a player as he's been, he is not a player that was take off the bubble wrap and let it go.
Well, and I think an interesting point to also bring up, Jake, and I don't want to get too deep into this because it's, save that conversation for a guy like Rick Venturi, who certainly can touch on it much better than I, but I think for any of us that go out there and watch Colts practice, it's pretty obvious the run game looks different. I mean, Shane Steichen brings a modern shotgun feel. It looks Saturday college offense to me than more of the traditional Frank Reich, a little bit more under center, a little bit more in between the tackles. And I know there are some people out there, and yet this is probably a hair nitpicking of Taylor's game, that question how effective of a runner he is out of the shotgun versus under center. I mean, we all watch Wisconsin play football. They're under center like 98% of the game. I mean, that's how Wisconsin's offense is operated. Now it's probably going to change with Luke Fickell, but it's neither here nor there. So it's not just necessarily where Taylor's at physically, 9 or 10 months removed from his last football action, but it's also this is a different rushing offense. He would be working with two different quarterbacks. Whether it is Gardner Minshew, whether it is Anthony Richardson, obviously he's got no prior history with them either. So I know we're probably in a bit of a quiet pattern with Taylor, unless people just want to chime in on Twitter, which I guess we can't totally rule that out. God, please don't tell me you're going to call it X.
Have you noticed on your phone when you're like, oh, I need to check my tweets or I want to tweet something, how many times you scroll past your pages of apps because you're looking for the blue bird?
Well, this is probably not something I should admit, but whatever. I'm so addicted to Twitter, I know exactly where it is on my phone. So my thumb, it's like it's got a magnet. My thumb just clicks right on the middle right side of the page one, and boom, I'm back in the app.
Okay.
And I'm shaking when I can't get in the app.
When it says error, no tweets aren't loading.
Yeah, exactly. You have reached your limit.
Now let me allow me to ask this: Is the Threads thing already done?
That seemed like a 24-hour period.
Yeah, quite the run there. Can we play the Rick Carlisle? It was fun while it lasted. Audio maybe for Threads there.
Yeah.
Now you created one, right, Jake?
I did. But
you had to create an Instagram for Threads, or you had an Instagram?
No, I had to create an Instagram to get a Threads account. And I did it only because I'm like, okay, I mean, if this is where everybody's going, I wanted to be able to, claim my name as an account. So I have an account.
You posted on the gram?
I don't think I've posted anything on Instagram yet.
You didn't do your cologne collection or anything?
What's that?
You didn't do the cologne collection photo?
No, I didn't want to create a lot of envy right away.
All right, first Instagram. Let's Sunday, your perch of the street race in Nashville.
There you go. Yeah.
Let me see if maybe I have posted something already. How do I know? Every time, here's the other thing that's weird. Every time I go on Instagram, it's nothing but videos of Britney Spears in like a thong in her living room dancing.
I mean, that's not the worst thing, is it?
Yeah,
and I
certainly had.
I asked Shannon, she's like, "Will
that's
you follow her?"
reminiscent, I think, of me and the Joel Erickson T-shirt yesterday
and I'm like,
to end the show.
how do I follow Britney Spears on Instagram? I don't remember doing that. Is that like an automatic account? And she's like, no, at some point you clicked on something. I'm like, okay, maybe I did. I don't know.
Paulina Gretzky has shown up in my timeline a few times, and I've been curious why that or how that happened.
Right.
No, not necessarily complaining.
That's when Maddie's looking over your shoulder like, how'd this get here?
Yeah,
I don't understand. What happened here?
I was following educational.
Algorithms out of control.
Educational accounts.
I have not done a story yet, and I can't.
Nashville's the perfect time. You'll be the only non-bachelorette party to be
bunch
posting
of school
Instagrams.
buses going past with the top cut off.
5 practices into camp. We'll get into any sort of position leads. We'll talk quarterback. Certainly that update, what we've seen through 5 practices. And again, a little bit more on that Jonathan Taylor situation for me and Rappaport yesterday. We'll play that audio coming up. Reggie Wayne at 9 o'clock. Bob Kravitz at 9:30. It continues to be a very, very comforting weather week here in Indianapolis. Supposed to be a beautiful Wednesday here in the Circle City. I'm Kevin Bowen. He's Jake Query. Mark Dykton with us as always. You're listening to Kevin Query on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
On
Just play it.
Amaya. In the air, left field. Senzel back some more. Miguel Amaya with his third homer of the year. And the Cubs lead it 19-5.
No owner talk, Mark?
Owner talk? What do you want owner talk for?
I thought you play a little Reds opening day or.
Oh, no. No.
It is embarrassing. I mean, 20-9. I saw they scored 4 in the top of the ninth.
Hey, had to make it a little closer than it appeared.
Bengals Bears score there.
You know, 4 is another key number from last night. Cubs still 4 back of the Reds.
That's okay.
Ben Lively did the Oprah, right? You get a run. It's one of those things where don't you just leave him in at that point?
Yeah.
Why
Instead of burning arms?
Why do you waste your bullpen?
Because they might still be pitching if that was the case right now.
What is the connection between last night's Chicago Cubs game and this radio program, aside from Mark being a Cubs fan and Kevin and I liking the Reds? There was something that took place in last night's game that connects in the Kevin Bacon game to the Kevin and Query radio program.
Tucker Barnhart started at catcher and has been on the show.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's where my head
Matter of
is
fact,
going.
that's probably more direct, but that happens every game. Or at least he's, on the roster.
I got nothing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you at the end of the segment. How's that?
No.
What a tease. What a tease. That's a professional right there. How about Framber Valdez, guys? No hitter for the Astros. 93 pitches. That is the fewest pitches in a no-hitter since David Cone in 1999. What do we think? Verlander to the Astros is going to push them to be the AL favorite?
It's almost like they should have, let him go in the first place if they're just going to get him back.
For sure. I asked Scotty, 2 weeks ago, I asked Scotty Johnson, I said, who do you think is going to be in the World Series? He said Astros. Don't look now, but the cute fellow's hanging around there, I'm telling you.
Cute fella made a couple moves yesterday,
I was going to say, they were certainly a buyer. Indians win 7-5, and that's pretty much the rundown baseball-wise. Tigers and Cardinals lose yesterday.
The Fever, I just had the sheet in front of me. Do you have the sheet in front of you?
They got to win, right? By one?
Yeah, but I was trying to pull up the... Here we go.
Beat
Fever last night
Taurasi and the
beating
Mercury?
Phoenix 72-71. They are back in action on Friday against Connecticut. That is a 7 o'clock tip.
Yes, second home win of the season for the Fever. Colts practice off today. They'll back at it tomorrow. Here was Anthony Richardson yesterday on the nasal septum procedure.
Just a little bit of pressure, like in the middle of my forehead, but that wasn't really stopping anything. My breathing was still fine, but it's just correcting some stuff just to get it better.
He did admit, Jake, he was kind of like, I don't really know why I waited this long. And again, I walk away from the presser, I'm like, that's like such a 21-year-old comment.
Totally.
But when you're in college, you just think you're invincible with everything. You're like, I'm good.
Now, is this one of those things where he didn't really notice it until they started practicing and kind of getting the workout going, where he's like, this feels weird?
Okay, two thoughts. First thought was, I'm like, we saw the videos of him playing basketball this offseason. I'm like, did he get hit in the nose? That was a thought that crossed my mind. But the second thought is, and I mean this in all seriousness, like when I go to Florida, I feel like my allergies are a lot different than they are here. When someone from Florida comes up here to the Midwest for the first time in his life, maybe I'm...
But you would think the Colts would have caught that like fairly early on, right?
Yeah, who knows? I can't get my brain to get too deep into that story. The Jonathan Taylor thing is enough for me. Richardson back in practice yesterday. We'll recap that, get more into Jonathan Taylor. And the Colts did make an offensive tackle move yesterday, a guy that actually has a bit of an NFL resume. We'll explain more coming up as well. Reggie Wayne at 9 o'clock, Bob Kravitz at 9:30. Kevin and Query here.
I'll give you the answer on the other side, too, from last night.
Oh, yeah, I totally forgot about that. This is the ultimate tease.
Dodgers, Padres.
You're listening to Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
22 minutes before the hour of 8 o'clock. My name is Jake Query. Kevin Bowen here as well. Mark Dykton is flying the Millennium Falcon. Is it Millennium Falcon or Millennial Falcon? I was never a Star Wars guy.
I've always heard it was Millennium Falcon, and I was like, what?
Is it?
I don't know. That's what the nerds
Is it Millennial or Millennium Falcon? It's got to be actually, it can't be the Millennial Falcon because you actually want it to do stuff, right?
Was that an old man joke? What the hell was that?
I would say I'm yelling at clouds, except for that it's a beautiful sunny morning this morning.
Millennium Falcon is what it says. Falcon.
Say that again.
Falcon. So it's not the Atlanta Falcons.
So it's pronounced like that, Mark?
That's what it says.
We don't go with the
But
Atlanta
what's the
Falcons?
first word?
Millennium.
Okay. Colts, you said day off today, Kevin, or just afternoon practice today?
Day off. I'm waiting for the ultimate tease you've had here. Can you explain this
I was
Cubs
getting
and
to that.
Reds connection here?
Yesterday during the Cubs-Reds game, take me out to the ball game, seventh inning stretch was sang by, or is it sang or sung?
Micah Shrewsbury.
Sung. I don't know. I didn't catch the seventh inning stretch. I didn't see who did it.
Andre Dawson.
Oh, the Hawk.
And you know the connection to this program that I find fascinating, and I appear to be the only one that does.
The Hawk, Andre Dawson.
Andre Dawson is the uncle-in-law, if that makes sense. But Andre Dawson is the uncle and very, very close, like spent every summer at the uncle's house level closeness to the wife of Stephen Holder.
Really?
Yes.
Really? I had no idea.
So Stephen Holder is from Miami. His wife is also from that area, and her mother, I believe, had simply one sibling, and it was the brother, which was Andre Dawson. So in the summertime, Stephen Holder's wife and her sister would spend the summer in Chicago at their aunt and uncle's, which was Andre Dawson and Andre Dawson's wife.
That was quite the tease for that.
Thank you. Going to Cubs games and everything else. See, you learn something every day.
Stephen for some memorabilia.
That's exactly right.
Hey, Steven, can I get a signed picture?
We went from Falcon to Hawk is what we did there.
There you go. Right in the
Kevin,
bird
tell me
family.
about the new offensive lineman for the Indianapolis Colts.
He's big, 6'9", 330. That is large. Dan Skipper is the name. Obviously, insert your jokes there on that one.
Does he sleep in a hammock?
5 starts last
Ever
year.
get stuck on an island?
For the Detroit Lions. Yeah, I knew it would be some low-hanging fruit here with trying to make some comedy out of that one.
It's hard to get him to come to practice every day, though, just so you know.
Mark,
It's a coconut for a phone.
Mark, remember a few weeks back when you hopped on the podcast and we did kind of the most indispensable Colts?
I do remember that.
I put Braden Smith atop the list, if I'm not mistaken. I think you had Bernard Ryman really high on the list as well. I think part of the reason for that is because you had no veteran depth at offensive tackle. Blake Freeland, the 4th-round pick out of BYU, he's that third guy so far through 5 practices. I've seen him a little bit more at right tackle than left. So basically, I think you view this move as some veteran insurance, and if Smith or Ryman were to go down, all of a sudden, a guy like Skipper, a guy like Freeland, they could be asked to play every single snap for you for however long that absence is. So
the Skipper looks like he could have been an offensive lineman, didn't he? Alan Hale?
Ooh, maybe back in the day. I don't know about a modern day offensive
maybe
lineman.
linebacker or cornerback.
Like in that era, right? Portly fellow?
Portly?
Huh?
I don't know.
Have you seen Dan Skipper? He certainly looks like, he looks like a mountain lion.
Can we play Guess the College for Dan Skipper? Are you aware, Kevin?
Sure.
I'm going to go with, Mark, you go as your first guess here.
Geez, this BYU. I have no idea.
Okay, I'm going to go.
That's Freeland.
I'm going to go with Texas Tech. Kevin, your guess?
Jake, very close.
Oh, so you know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's got to be Baylor then. Second guess for you, Mark?
North Carolina State.
Now, how is that close to Texas?
I don't know.
Tech?
I'm guessing a random offensive lineman's college. I don't know.
Kevin, what do we got?
I'm looking at pictures of the Skipper right now.
Woo Pig Suey.
Oh, really? Okay. That'd be Arkansas, by the way, for those that are unfamiliar.
The Razorbacks of Arkansas. I guess good news on the offensive line. Through 5 practices, they've had no injury issues whatsoever. It's been the same starting 5 for all 5 practices. Yesterday, again, was the first day in full pads. Jake, I think one of the head-scratching things about Chris Ballard's offseason for me has been just the lack of offensive line attention. I mean, he has literally said it's not a personnel issue. His words haven't said this, his actions have. His actions have said it was a coaching issue, maybe a scheme issue. And so they have elected to go with the same 5 from last year that ended last season. So that would be Bernard Ryman, Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Will Fries, and Braden Smith. That's been the group so far. But the depth of that group, I'm like, wow, you are relying on a whole lot of youth if 1 or 2 injuries occur. And, I mean, again, we know offensive line injuries happen. So that's where I think Skipper enters the fray here.
I have to admit, can we just call him? You said it's Dan Skipper, right? Can
we
call him
Dan?
Yeah, and I know that Gilligan's Island's a little passé, granted, but Skipper just sounds, doesn't it? I mean, can you even hear the name Skipper without hearing Gilligan referencing Skipper? Skipper?
Yeah, Skipper is
kind
of tough. Do you think Dan
Alan
Campbell
Hale
had a nickname for him?
Gilligan, probably, right? I think Chris Ballard knows, Kevin. I thought it was very telling when we were out at camp and we interviewed Ryan Kelly. And I thought Ryan Kelly was very transparent, very honest about what I don't think was any secret, but that the terrible tragedy that he and his wife had gone through of losing their daughter, that just weighed on him, and that it put him in dark place maybe is too extreme, but it put him in an isolated place. And I think that when you, especially at the offensive, and he basically admitted to us, and there's no shame in this, he's a human being, but he admitted to us that probably impacted, because that's just a position. Offensive line in the National Football League is a position, Kevin, where you've got to be 100% like laser focused mentally all the time. And I think he essentially said to us, I wasn't. I was going through the motions, but I lost weight. That it was really challenging.
He lost a lot of weight.
And no
listed
one
at 307 and said he was down to 285.
There is no one that would blame him for that based on what he was going through, and that is an actual legitimate human being. Anybody that does, when I was a kid, I played football. We played through that kind of thing. Okay, well then you're an ass if you have no empathy for what he was going through. But I think that Chris Ballard perhaps looked at it, Kevin, and said, there's a lot of outside chatter and noise about our offensive line falling short of where it needed to be, but as the general manager of this franchise, I know it inside and out, and I know that the anchor and most important piece of the line, in my opinion, that everything kind of feeds off of, was not at 100%. And I am very comfortable and confident that he is a different player and a different size this year, and that then has the ripple effect outward from the middle of the line, and we're going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a lot of eggs to put into that basket. If you kind of just boil it down to that central figure, that person impacting the entire unit, because I would argue, I think, all of the positions had guys take steps back from the previous year. And really, probably the bigger question that I have is just more about depth, of that you are kind of that one injury away from being in scramble mode with a lot of youth up front. And I feel like it's a game that Ballard has played before. And then we get to January, and he's like, yeah, I regret that. And I'm like, well, isn't that kind of your core philosophy? That is what is surprising to me with that. And I know Ballard mentioned back last Tuesday on Report Day about, I thought the offensive line played better late in the year. Jake, let's not act like the offense was all of a sudden scoring 35 points a game.
Right.
Late in the year. You had some pretty bad offensive performances still in the second half of the year. So a little bit of offensive line depth there.
You know who I was asked about yesterday, and I thought, well, you know what? We haven't mentioned this guy's name at all. And Reggie Wayne's going to join us at 9 o'clock this morning, so there'll be a good chance to ask him because he would know better than anybody. But how much work have you seen out of Kevin, or have you been impressed by, not impressed by, off the radar? Excuse me, is this a guy that's been off the radar, or automatically has looked like a player? Josh Downs.
Yeah, I haven't noticed him as much maybe in the team drills. I think in the one-on-ones, you certainly see him. Selfishly, basically what happens in the one-on-ones is Michael Pittman faces Kenny Moore pretty much every rep. I guess you understand that. They're the two veterans from a wideout corner standpoint. I would think it'd be good for Josh Downs to face Kenny Moore in some of those because, he is, and I think Kenny's had a nice camp. He is, when playing well, he's certainly one of the better nickel slot corners in the league. Whereas Downs is kind of going up against guys that I don't even know if they're going to make the roster. But yeah, there hasn't been, I think, an abundance of catches out of him in the team drills. Missed a lot of time in the spring due to a knee injury. As we mentioned a little bit earlier in the week, he is the roommate to Anthony Richardson. And you talk about NFL bloodlines, there's a lot of them for Josh Downs in his family. So I'm curious to see his role, Isaiah McKenzie's role. I know we had McKenzie on the show to begin things earlier this week. Stature-wise, they're two similar frames, but I think they're two different styles of wideouts. So how the Colts utilize them, how Shane Steichen utilizes them will be something that I'll be watching.
Do you remember a year ago when I was keen on Dallas Flowers? Mm-hmm. And it's admittedly because he made one really cool play that I thought, and then I liked the fact that he played at Pittsburgh State because I knew a little bit about that school. And it had nothing to do with me having any sort of trained eye about his football acumen in any way, shape, or form. Open disclaimer. But every year I pick a guy and I go, I just like that guy. He just looks like a football player. And then I follow him. I have one yesterday that I decided I was watching them out on the field, and Kevin, I said to myself, that guy right there looks like a thoroughbred. That guy right there looks like a player. That guy, if nothing else, is the Dick Vitale all-airport team where when he gets off the bus at the airport, that guy just looks like an NFL player, so I'm all in. I'm all in. If he makes the roster, I'll buy a jersey. I'll do the whole deal. I'm all in.
Who you got?
Wide receiver. You got any guesses?
Well, if I was thinking all airport, Mike Strawn would probably be atop that list, but I have a feeling
Boy, I'd forgotten about Mike Strawn.
You kind of already...
We're still waiting for that,
I've seen that. Yesterday was the annual August day for Mike Strawn. Flashing, Randy Moss plays.
Alec Pierce.
Alec Pierce. Poor Alec Pierce. Not Alec Pierce.
Not Alec Pierce. I don't know. I mean, a lot of those wideouts are tall. I mean, Brashard Perriman.
Vincent Smith.
What was the young boy that we met yesterday? Really nice kid. He and his dad from down near Trafalgar. Lehman, was that right?
I think that was the day before, right? Was it Parker yesterday?
Or Parker. Yeah, it might have been Parker yesterday. Alec Pierce, his favorite player. One of those two, Alec Pierce was his favorite player. Parker was a really nice kid, too.
Yeah, really, really good kid. Indian Creek.
Who did you guess, Mark?
Vincent Smith.
I'll do this in the Chuck Crabb voice, okay? At receiver for Indianapolis, he's a 6'5 rookie from Southeast Missouri State. Number 3, Johnny King. Are you familiar with Johnny King, Kevin?
I know absolutely zero about Johnny King. I don't know if I've seen him make one play.
I don't care. All I know is when he goes out there and does the high knee bend jogs and everything, that guy looks like a player. I'm all in on Johnny King. If Johnny King makes the roster, I mean, it's like I'm not going to do shirtless, but I'll bring in Long's Donuts for everybody if Johnny King makes the roster. 6'5", 209, Southeast Missouri State.
Do you know their mascot?
Panthers.
Nope.
Cougars.
I'm trying to think of
the Red Hawks.
This was back years ago.
So what were they before?
I don't know.
This is a couple decades ago. Do you remember the name Jackie Stiles? Like a great women's basketball player, college-wise. I want to say she took Southwest Missouri
Jackie Stiles,
State
the attorney at law,
to like the Final Four.
Yes, I do remember Jackie Stiles.
Was it Southwest Missouri State?
Yeah, which is Missouri State now. That's where Alford coached. Kevin Alt played there. I did a story when I was in Missouri.
Did they go to the Final Four, or am I imagining things?
No, I think you're right. When I was working in St. Louis, they had a girl named Carrie Koch who was like the Stephanie White of the state of Missouri. That scored like 4,000 points, went to Missouri State, which was then Southwest Missouri State. Southeast Missouri State, you said, is the Red Hawks?
The Red Hawks.
Are we going to guess what they originally were?
I mean, I'd have to look that up.
Isn't Red Hawks typically what you go to if you were originally like Redskins or something like that?
I'm looking.
This is riveting radio.
I know.
I realize.
Yeah. Strong here. Nothing screams Colts off day like this. Reggie Wayne going to join us coming up at 9. Bob Kravitz at 9:30. Jake, you look at a trade possibility for Jonathan Taylor. We'll play some Ian Rappaport audio coming up here in a bit. You correct me if I'm wrong. You said kind of 5th, 6th round?
That's what I think. If you go with, Kevin, the running, and Jonathan Taylor is admittedly one of the top probably 4 running backs in the NFL. But it's also like being the starting center on the Lollipop Guild. Like, the biggest challenge is a team that needs a running back. At this point, somebody that's going out and trying to acquire a running back is doing it because they have probably a short fill fix, right? There's nobody. I mean, it would be somebody that their back went down. They need somebody for half a season or whatever it might be, or a rental for the year. Because Jonathan Taylor, I mean, if you go out and get him, you know you're probably getting him for 1 year because he's a free agent at the end of the year. So the precedent, and I know that we're going 30 years back and things have changed, but even when the running back was a more prioritized position, and Marshall Faulk was the first of like the hybrid back and was literally not even yet into his prime, Marshall Faulk got you a 2nd and 5th round pick. Marshall Faulk, who still had yet to be an MVP and a Super Bowl champion, and was coming off of a dynamic start to his NFL career. The challenge for the Colts if they were to trade Jonathan Taylor is there are 2 running backs out there that teams can have without giving up asset to get them, and then they can determine their own terms on how long they're going to have them. And you don't get that with Taylor. Wonderful player, no doubt about it.
Nyheim Hines last year goes for a 5th and Zach Moss. So you think Taylor would go for less than Hines?
Again, last year, first off, and I can't recall, Hines was dinged up, right?
I don't.
I mean, he's coming off.
I don't remember anything with injury related seriously with Hines.
Because Taylor is coming off of an injury that cost him games. Jonathan Taylor has been a great player, Kevin, but he hasn't been a great player the entire time he's been here, right? And he hasn't been a great player in probably a year because he's been hurt. So he's coming off ankle, and I realize the surgery probably was not a huge deal, but he's a guy that it is now known seemingly failed the physical for his team when he showed up at camp. And he's unhappy, and his contract expires at the end of the season, and you have Ezekiel Elliott and Dalvin Cook that are out there just sitting on a shelf like, hey, what's up? I mean, that's the good point on Hines. I mean, no doubt about that, because he's a better player than Nyheim Hines. I just think there are a lot of litigating factors that go into it that are going to make it difficult.
We'll touch more on this on the other side. Again, Ian Rappaport had some comments yesterday, NFL Network, on possible trade suitors for Jonathan Taylor. We'll play that audio coming up here in the 8 o'clock hour. Again, Reggie Wayne joining us at 9 o'clock. Kevin and Query here on a Wednesday.
on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Cubs are gonna win today. They're singing, go Cubs, go.
You're listening to Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Seriously, it's one game.
Swanson will stand in, still nobody out.
I haven't overreacted to any Reds win this season.
Swanson drills that one right field. That's back, and that is gone. Dansby Swanson the other way.
I think they should have a rule as a starting pitcher. If you give up more than 7 runs before the 4th inning, you have to stay in for the rest of the game.
You have to, even if you throw like 180 pitches.
I don't care. It's punishment. Punishment. Ben Lively should have been out there for all 9 innings,
Can
all
he
27
pitch again
outs.
today? That'd be great.
I know. There were a lot of those comments last night. Reds get walloped. Look like a football score, 20-9. They don't really make any move of substance. Although the A's guy came in and did decent. Big baseball news yesterday. We had a no-hitter, though. Framber Valdez. First lefty in Astros history to throw a no-no.
I'm disappointed because typically when there's a no-hitter, like through 8 or something, I will get a hold of my dad. I'm like, Dad, no-hitter going on. You got to turn it on. And I did not do so last night.
There were some shaky moments late. Even the final out was kind of one of those weird bloopers to the shortstop. It was like, oh boy, if this falls in front of him, it could have been an infield hit there. But I thought it was cool because, the Astros, their fan base were so hyped yesterday about the Justin Verlander news. It was a great atmosphere. And, what was it, 93 pitches?
93, yeah.
93?
Mm-hmm.
So the fewest amount of pitches for a no-no since David Cohn in 99.
Now, Mark, what do we do on this program?
We educate and entertain.
Right, and we were just talking about Southeast Missouri State University because it produced future Colts Ring of Honor receiver Johnny King, and who 6'5", 209, and he just looks smooth.
I close my eyes and I can picture it being unveiled already at Lucas Oil Stadium.
That's right. Well, they've got to remove one of the AFC wildcard participant banners, but they'll get it up there. Now,
AFC finalist.
They also listen. More than one person has shown me photos that they have of when they had banners that said AFC wildcard.
Yeah, I have that.
It's got to be photoshopped.
No,
I have that photo.
AFC participant is what you guys said. There's no way participant
is not on there, but
banner.
There were banners that just said AFC wildcard.
Yeah, it said wild card.
Participant, to be clear, was what you guys had said.
Right. I misspoke
originally.
But that's
I mean,
correct.
I will say it's 6 1/2 the other, is it not?
Participant is 3rd grade trophy. That is
what's wild card.
What's
wild card?
You made it, but you didn't do anything.
We got in, but we didn't win.
Is a slight step above. AFC finalist was that was very much like we got kind of far.
At any rate, Southeast Missouri State we now know as the Red Hawks, and I'd said, well, that's usually a name that was changed. What did we learn about Southeast Missouri State University?
I dug deep because that's what I do on this show, apparently, is look up mascot history. It says they used to be known as the Indians, so yes, they did go through a name change. The most fascinating part is right here in 2005 when they were deciding what new nicknames should be. Obviously, they held this to a campus vote, and you can tell from some of these names. It says, after passing on names like the Ninja Squirrels and the Fighting Okra.
Hold on. Where does the Fighting Okra play their home games?
I don't know.
Ryan's?
I thought at first you said Oprah.
No, Okra. O-K-R-A. So after passing on names like the Ninja Squirrels, which would have been a hell of a t-shirt, I feel like, and the Fighting Okra, Southeast introduces Rowdy the Red Hawk.
Okay.
Rowdy was hatched on January 22nd, 2005.
Okay. I mean,
I kind of want a Ninja Squirrels or Fighting Okra.
Hell yeah. Can you imagine what the mascot would look like?
The Fighting Okra, that can't be serious, right?
Yeah, we've got a live Ninja Squirrel here in the south end zone.
Well, that's when you hold like the campus vote like during lunch. Like, everybody put your votes in. Somebody's like, I got Fighting Okra here.
How hard is a Ninja Squirrel outfit to come up with? It's just like aren't ninjas completely covered?
It's just a squirrel with like a headband on it and like throwing.
Oh
stars.
yeah, I guess you're right. But I thought don't ninjas
we're
wear
gonna
like a
smoke a couple bowls before we sit in this marketing meeting here to make the Ninja Squirrel mascot.
How about Fighting Okra?
No wonder why. I mean, what was like pudding fountain not like in the mix?
I don't know.
No Colts practice today. Reggie Wayne going to join us coming up at 9. Mark, will you cue up that Ian Rappaport clip from yesterday? And we
close my Red Hawk history tab.
We are in a period here of, until Jonathan Taylor comes off the PUP list, until he wants to, and I don't see him doing this, but if he wants to speak publicly, I guess it would be a bit quiet on this end for the next couple of days. Here is Ian Rappaport, though, providing a little bit of an update on Jonathan Taylor yesterday.
Well, the trade request still stands. We also have the words from Colts owner Jim Irsay that he is not planning to trade Jonathan Taylor, and this is going to be really fascinating to watch. And there's been a flurry of information, a flurry of reports over the last couple of days trying to sort this out. Were the Colts threatening to put him on the non-football injury list, which they probably can't do? That was something that was kind of the storyline yesterday. Now this is going to settle in a little bit. I don't get the sense anything is imminent as far as a resolution. So the real question is, are teams going to call and make the decision challenging for the Colts? And from my understanding, just talking to several GMs across the league, there is expected to be interest in Jonathan Taylor. I know a couple at least who are planning to call the Colts just to gauge where they are. Would they really, really not trade him? And then it comes down to the contract, and I do believe, based on the same information, that there are teams willing to do a real contract for him. Would the Colts entertain that? Would they trade away their best player? All of this remains to be seen, and publicly the Colts have said they are not. But this is what's going to play out over the next couple weeks as the stalemate between Taylor and the Colts continues.
Find that interesting, Jake. If you believe that report, there are some teams that are curious. There are some teams potentially willing to entertain some contract talks with Taylor. I think obviously you're still a long ways away from satisfying the what you would assume are pretty extreme demands from Taylor and his camp. But I am of the thought, if you are not going to sign him to a contract extension, you do everything in your power to trade him in the next month. Everything.
Yeah, I can see that. But has he hurt his trade value? Based on the injury, the alleged back injury, the nature of being a malcontent. Malcontent's probably, I mean, that's unfair, but you get what I'm saying. Are there teams that are, and the fact that he has a contract expiring, are teams going to be like, yeah, I don't know.
You're right. I mean, there are a lot of hurdles to clear, but again, what exactly the trade value looks like, the compensation, potentially handing out a contract, et cetera, et cetera. If the Colts can have several teams fielding calls from them, I think that is very good news in trying to get to some sort of end with all of this. Daniel tweeted this at me, Jake. I love Taylor, but it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to spend big money elsewhere. My counter to that would be, where are they spending that money, and when have they ever done that? What are you using the Taylor money on? Show me the players. Show me the positions that you'd be. You have a time right now in the next probably 2 to 3 years where you can heavily front load contracts. You can be aggressive from a cap space free agency standpoint, but that is not something that Chris Ballard has chosen to do, and I'll believe it when I see it.
Kevin, with our health insurance here, you get two options. You get that, and I'm always unsure of which one's which, so bear with me. But when in American health insurance in 2023, people usually have either a flex spending account or a health spending account. One of them, like the company chips into, the other one, I don't know. But one of them rolls over from 1 year to the next. You don't have to go online in December and buy 740 boxes of Band-Aids like my dad did with my account, because you're going to lose the money. The money rolls over to the next year. So you have a balance of $1,200. The next year, your $1,500 kicks in. Now you have a balance of $2,700. Does salary cap in the NFL work the same way? Does it roll over? I know they have a salary floor.
Yeah, I think you got to spend 90% of your cap over a 4-year period.
Okay. So is it possible then that the salary cap, in terms of, you ask where they're spending it, that they have in their mind players that they are going to extend, and they are trying to get it all set up in a way that for one big year they're able to get taking care of the players they need to take care of?
My question would be, who are those players?
Pittman?
I think it stops there. Kwity Paye's not due an extension anytime soon. Bernard Ryman's not due an extension. Obviously, you're not paying your quarterback. I don't. Buckner's under contract for several more years.
When did they last extend
Shaq
Smith?
Leonard is under contract. Braden Smith's under contract for several more years. I don't see anybody outside of Pittman that is on the horizon anytime
receivers,
soon.
Free agent receivers?
That would be so out of the norm for Ballard. It's just I can understand where Jonathan Taylor is coming from in this situation because, Jake, would you call Jonathan Taylor the best player in the Colts offense?
Yes.
Maybe debate he's second, but yeah, I would say most people would say he's the best player in the Colts offense. Jake, he's the 5th highest paid player on that offense.
Yeah, no, he has a very legitimate beef.
And we're talking
about a very legitimate beef.
We're talking about a historically bad offense. We're not even talking about we're not talking about a quarterback that's making more money than him. We're talking about an offensive line that just underperformed. Mo Alley Cox makes more money.
If I'm Jonathan Taylor, here's my beef. If I'm Jonathan Taylor, my beef is this. Okay, I'm walking in that locker room, and I go, "Hey, what's up?" And I walk past Quentin Nelson. And I walk past Quentin Nelson, who got an extension before his contract was up with a health question, right? And then I round the corner and I go over to the cafeteria area of the facility and making a protein shake, I see Shaq Leonard. And I go, "Hey, what's up?" And then I remember that Shaq Leonard got an extension before his deal, before the 11th hour when his health was in question, right? And there are others. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't, but there are others that got extended before their deal was up. And I'm Jonathan Taylor, and I'm going, what do I need to do? I mean, I was as productive as anybody, and yet, you just continue to put me on the back burner, and you basically have told everybody you're going to franchise tag me. I just want security. I get it. I get where he's coming from.
Yeah, and, several people here, and Cam and Elvis, I appreciate both of this, have mentioned, you think Elvis King is his real name, by the way, on Twitter?
Probably not.
Do you have a hernia right there?
Sounded like it was from deep in the gut there.
That's my Elvis. By the way, Elvis Presley, by the way, and AJ Foyt born 8 days apart from one another. I learned that yesterday. So if you wanted to know what if you think how old would Elvis be today, look at AJ Foyt. There you go.
They have mentioned Grover Stewart, and yeah, Grover's a guy that I think would be due and certainly deserves something. But I come back to again what the thinking has got to be. The thinking has to be the support for Richardson more than anything else. And Grover Stewart is not a direct support of Anthony Richardson. And this comes back to, I've heard a lot of people, and Jim Irsay being one of them, Jake, over the last couple of days mention, remember what the Colts did with Marshall Faulk? Remember what the Colts did with Edgerrin James? I just don't think those situations are comparable to this one. Okay, let's go back to the Faulk one. Faulk's gone, right? They say see you to him. What do? They draft edge 4 overall, so clearly they still invested quite significantly in a running back. Then they had Tarek Glenn. Then they had Marvin Harrison. All right, fast forward to 2006 when they move on from Edgerrin. At that point, they had Marvin, Reggie, Dallas, Tarek Glenn, Jeff Saturday. And then what did they do in the draft? They drafted Joseph Adai.
Yeah.
They kept the cupboard fully stocked for Peyton Bleepin Manning. And now you look at the cupboard for Anthony Richardson, and if Taylor's gone and Pittman walks in free agency, Anthony Richardson walks into a kitchen with Deion Jackson, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, Jelani Woods, and Kylan Granson. And again, we can't even compare Richardson to Manning exiting college. Manning played in the SEC and started in the SEC for 4 years.
Yeah, everybody knew Manning was the chosen one since he was 15. Yes.
Yeah, Richardson, it's like, boom, this is major boom or bust. So I can't even get of the Irsay thinking here of let's remember what our franchise has done at running back. Sure, you've moved on from running backs. You still have also gotten other running backs, and you've made sure that your young quarterback, in that sense, Manning, and I guess he wasn't even young when they moved on from Edgerrin, that he still had a whole lot of skill, talent, and overall offensive talent around him. The same thing can't be said for the Colts right now.
And I know, and people get on me all the time about hey, quit talking about players from the past like that. Nobody compares to the past of the franchise more than Jim Irsay. And Jim Irsay has to know when he looks at the situation with Jeff George, we had with Jeff George, we had a receiver for him, we traded it. We had a lineman for him, we traded it. And we had a running back that held out, was a malcontent, and that we ended up having to trade, and Eric Dickerson. And then all of a sudden you've got Jeff George had nothing around him, and it didn't work out. And he went elsewhere, and you found out, you know what, the guy can play. But he couldn't play here because he had nothing around him. Irsay has to be aware of that and see that as a precedent on the danger where they could be. By the way, Delta State University of Mississippi, they're the Statesmen, but their unofficial mascot since the 1990s, the Fighting Okra, because okra is, quote, tough, green, and prickly. So there you go. There already is a Fighting Okra. How about that?
Those T-shirts are sweet.
I was going to say, we got to get some of those T-shirts, don't we? I think the Colts, I think this overall thought by the Colts, seemingly having a change of heart, and again, is this Shane Steichen? I agree with, big picture-wise. I agree with it from a roster-building standpoint, don't invest in running backs majorly. That if you're going to start an expansion franchise tomorrow, I would agree with that. But that's not reality. The reality is you've got an extremely young and extremely developmental quarterback. You've got cap space. If you don't support him in a fragile nature here in his first couple years, you might never develop him. And if you do that, or you don't do that, I should say, boom. You're back starting at square one. I think that's the concern you have. Paying running backs, drafting them in the second round, yeah, I am not a fan of that. But again, you've got to live in the reality of where you're at right now. And you have a quarterback unlike really any we've seen enter the NFL. And you don't have Marvin and Reggie and Dallas around that quarterback like you did in the previous era. And if you skimp and you shortcut on skill players, that is a risky game to play when you've got a guy that we know, and we've seen through 5 practices of camp, there is a whole lot of growth that's needed.
Hey, Jake, enough about Jonathan Taylor. Have Kevin send him to QC Kinetics. Let's talk about the players who are out practicing and trying to make the team better. Let's talk about optimistic linebackers, wideout needs, how the offensive line is doing with a new coach, etc. The line, we'll start with that, Kevin.
Yeah, as I said, I think it was last segment, Jake, I would say one of the best things so far has been those 5 guys have practiced every single starting rep together. So, you talk about continuity, you talk about a communication standpoint, you obviously have to like that. As far as the linebacker is concerned, we did see a change in Shaquille Leonard's workload the last couple of days. They have put on shoulder pads. Yesterday they went full pads. We have not seen him do 11-on-11 in the more physical parts of practice so far. So I do think that is kind of the next sort of box for him to check as he continues to try and slowly progress back into it. But still, 5 practices in, the fact that Leonard has practiced every single day and has done the amount of work he's done, I am stunned by.
Here's a good comment as well. Jake, the Colts offensive line was built for quick passing like Luck, Rivers, and Wentz to keep the defense honest to open running lanes. Last year with Matt Ryan, he held the ball way too long, couldn't get out of the pocket. It made it easier for the defense to simply pin back their ears and attack all the time, which also stopped the running game. If Richardson could work on short, quick passes and get the percentage up, the O-line will be fine as well as our running game. That's how they're designed. Problem is, Anthony Richardson right now, in terms of the rhythm of the short passing game, Kevin, that appears to be something that is an area not yet of strength.
Yeah, Richardson to me looks most comfortable, Jake, when he's throwing the ball down the field. He is a very good deep ball thrower. I am very impressed by the amount of touch and his ability, whether, again, it's from an arc standpoint or velocity standpoint. Balls 15, 20, 30 yards down the field, that is where he feels most natural. When he's got the driver in his hands, he feels great. When he's got the wedges and the short irons, that's where it's a little shaky. It's a little rusty.
That was the known about him coming in, right? I mean, that has yet to prove to be inaccurate. Let's put it that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That scouting report about him.
Again, we have still yet to see Juju Brents, the Warren Central product, practice yet. His absence now. We have yet to see him in an NFL practice. So not ideal for him as the Colts will get back to practice tomorrow.
How has Kenny Moore looked?
I think he's had a good camp. Yeah. I think he's done a nice job. Certainly a huge year for him contractually and the disappointment from last year. But yeah, I've noticed him making some plays and, I have not, maybe some one-on-ones. The corners have struggled at times, but in the team portion of it, I don't see too many big plays being given up. I mean, to be fair, Gardner Minshew, again, is more of kind of a single-double guy in methodically moving the ball down the field. He was great yesterday. They did a goal line situation to start practice. Minshew was 3 of 3 for 3 touchdowns. So him and Richardson were pretty fired up about that.
Yesterday, by the way, I sent a tweet of the opening. I've referenced this before. The show One Day at a Time. Are you guys familiar with One Day at a Time?
I'm not.
I've heard of it. I don't know anything about it, though.
Valerie Bertinelli and Mackenzie Phillips were the two, and Bonnie Franklin. So it was on from
showing up on your Instagram feed?
Well, I mean, Valerie Bertinelli is still, I think, somewhat pop culturally relevant, don't you think?
I have no idea.
You're not familiar with her son. So you know who Eddie Van Halen is, right?
Yeah.
So she was married to Eddie Van Halen, and then they have the son. What's his name? Wolfgang, isn't that his name? That's like the guitarist, and that's her son. I mean, she's the mother of that guy. But at any rate, that the show fictionally took place in Indianapolis. That's the only reason it would be of relevance around here. I mean, it was relatively popular, but they just did a remake of it that's out right now on one of the networks or Netflix or something, One Day at a Time. But I said that the opening credits to One Day at a Time from probably 82, 83 are nothing but aerials of downtown Indianapolis. And it's fascinating because there's nothing. There's no One America building. There's no dome. There's no nothing. It's literally the landmarks are the art museum, the pyramids. They do an entire aerial over the pyramids.
Pyramids.
Oh, look at this. Here's a business park that is going to have 40% occupancy probably at one time. And then the War Memorial and the Hyatt. The Hyatt's like a big landmark. But I was just curious because people are like, why would I know that? It was 1982. And I'm like, it goes back to our thing about Cheers. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I know shows like Gilligan's Island's from the 60s, but we all know it, right?
I might have missed this, and we probably could have brought it up when we were at the State Fair on Friday. Did I see that, and I could be totally wrong on this, USA Track and Field is like relocating to the State Fairgrounds? There's going to be some sort of indoor track situation up there?
I hope that's right, because that'd be great. I did not know that.
I could be wrong on that. I just briefly read something along those lines there, but that would be interesting. I mean, obviously, it'd be an indoor situation, training athletes, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah,
I do know that the Sam Schmidt Foundation, that we've had him on when they've, I don't know the exact name, and I apologize for the name of the organization, Conquer Paralysis. The Conquer Paralysis Now 2023 group that Sam Schmidt is a part of that obviously works against paralysis. That foundation is moving into the old. Did you guys remember the old 5 Seasons? Do you remember that, Kevin?
Yeah.
That's up on
right there. What Shorty's golf course used to be. Shorty's is now done.
You see it like on 465 at like Westfield. So the old 5 Seasons building, which has been vacant forever and was a pretty cool health club when it was in its prime in the early 2000s, that Conquer Paralysis group is moving into that building. And so now that building finally has a tenant. Now it looks like, by the way, while I'm on it, there's a sign of life at the old marsh at 62nd and Keystone, which has become a complete eyesore and was bought by a huge church like 5 years ago. And then they said that because of COVID, they were delayed in the renovation of it. It looked like they painted it yesterday or a couple days ago.
Is that Chase Bank open in front of it?
The Chase Bank is open. That's it's weird. Like all of a sudden there's just a bank in the corner of the parking lot. But the church, it looks like maybe they've finally started. I think they bought it in like 2016 or something like that.
Reggie Wayne going to join us at 9. Bob Kravitz at 9:30. David is asking about the tight ends. Is Mo Alley Cox the clear number 1? I would say no. I think it's been a lot of rotation there. Jelani Woods has missed the last, day and a half, the hamstring injury. But I've seen Kylan Granson. I've seen Drew Ogletree with the starters at different points. Again, new position coach there. And then Will Mallory, the 5th-round pick out of Miami, he is now back to practice after missing several months due to
foot issue?
A foot injury, yeah. So I still think we're pretty early on settling what that tight end depth chart looks like. There's still
Doesn't it feel like
practices to go in camp?
It feels to me, Kevin, like tight end is the position where the Colts have the least versatility. And I don't mean that as a knock, but it feels to me like at tight end you have the least drop off 1 to 5.
Yeah, it's like a lot of, I think, kind of like
a lot of 7.5s,
2s and 3s, if you're going to label it like that. And who's the number one?
That's what I mean.
Yeah, in that room. Yeah, I think that's kind of a fair statement. I don't think like you're Baron at that position, but it's a lot of youth too. And so you're hoping some guys emerge. I mean, you drafted Granson in round 4? You drafted Woods in round 3. Ogletree was a draft pick. Mallory was a draft pick. So you've invested there, but it's just obviously having some of those guys.
Barons is a cool mascot.
Develop.
Like when they were going with the Ninja Squirrels at Southeast Missouri, Barons is always kind of a cool.
You a Red Baron guy?
Who I did eat some. Do they still do Totinos?
Oh, I love Totino.
Totino, man.
That was my diet for about 3 years.
Oh, I mean, in middle school, are you kidding? Chris and John Love's house, Totino's frozen. Do they still make the French bread pizzas?
They make the pizza rolls. I know that.
Oh,
I feel like now we settle more on Jack's from a frozen pizza standpoint.
Yeah.
In the Bowen household.
DiGiorno's, they still do that?
Yeah,
The French bread pizzas were big in the early to mid 80s, man. I don't know if they still do this or not.
French bread pizza still gets it done.
Yeah, I don't know. Do they still make those?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're allegedly a more heart and health conscious society, but I don't know. By the way, time for a morning check down.
The morning check down. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Indiana's numbers. His average sitting at 275.
It's like the 9th time you've played this.
This is different home runs.
Drive left field. That one on its way. And Nico will touch them all. 14-5. Nico with his 8th.
That's where the big boys go.
I see tied the most in franchise history.
I mean,
in a game.
I'm not playing. These are all different home runs in the game. There were 6 home runs by the Cubs in the game.
I remember when the Cubs in 1984 in Game 1 of the NLCS scored like 14 runs and had Rick Sutcliffe hit 2 home runs. Gary Matthews hit a homer. Everybody hit a homer for the Cubs, and then they lost the series.
Are you going to abandon being a Reds fan? Are you going to abandon following this team?
That audio is unbelievable. Drew sent me this, by the way, before we get deeper in the morning check down. New pavilion, and this is from David Woods, who we had on a few weeks back. New pavilion could signal Indy's return as track and field hub. Indoor track and field venue Fall Creek Pavilion was unveiled recently at the State Fairgrounds. A portable 200-meter banked oval will be installed for about 3 months a year for high school, college, national, and international meets. Seating capacity is to approach 5,000. Wow.
That's pretty cool.
So it looks like this is swine bar related, Jake. Swine barn. I'm thinking back to David.
That's the new swine barn there on the... So what, you move the piggies out and then the runners in?
David says right here, can pigs and pole vaulters coexist?
I was going to say.
You know what they're saying to the pigs right now?
Well, where are you going to go?
Thank you, Drew, for sending that over.
I would think it might be a bit malodorous when you move in. You're in the middle of a run and then suddenly the pigs leave a stench, I would think. Mm-hmm. I like the pigs, though. I got no problem with pigs. Sure. I'm pro-pig, but I'm just saying.
Oink, oink as you clear the bar.
By the way, last night in the WNBA, it was the Fever winning 72-71 over Phoenix. They are in action again on Friday, 7 o'clock tip against Connecticut. Fever now 7-19.
It is official. The U.S. women's national team will take on Sweden coming up. That is a 5 a.m. game on Sunday. I saw someone mention this yesterday. FIFA and the TV rights people to air the World Cup down in Australia and New Zealand, they were banking on the U.S. to win the group. So they had scheduled all their games thinking they would win the group, moving on into more ideal time frames. Well, now they got second in the group. So I think this trend of like the 4 a.m. kicks, that could be a little bit more apparent for however long their stay is going to be in the World Cup, which I don't think it's a given that they're going to win this match by any means. So down to the Sweet 16 for the U.S. women. It is win or go home. Speaking of home, the Colts home here in the month of August, back at Grand Park tomorrow. It's a morning practice at 9 a.m. It'll be a night practice coming up on Saturday. Sunday, their only afternoon practice of camp. I think it's a 2 or 2:30 start for Sunday. And then the schedule really starts to lighten up at Grand Park. You get into preseason games a week from Saturday, the joint practices with the Bears coming up. 2 weeks from today, actually, is the first joint practice with the Bears. So if you want to see the Colts, they have 8 sessions left at Grand
Sunday
Park.
Got some thunderstorms in the area, too, so it might be an indoor situation.
Yeah, certainly want to keep an eye on that. But yeah, 2 weeks from today, Mark, you're going to be out there, right?
Yep.
Watching the Bears?
Uh-huh.
If you were from Sweden, aside from the fact that your women are getting ready to play the U.S. in the Women's World Cup, if you're from Sweden, do you think that you more, like if you were a native of Sweden and you're now living in the U.S., do you think when you tell people you're from Sweden, which of these three do you think is more quickly and often referenced? ABBA, Fish, or Chef?
Oh, I thought you were going to say IKEA.
Or IKEA.
Yeah, I was going to say IKEA probably.
You think so?
Yeah.
But IKEA, though.
You know how many times I've said I need a Flurgan in my life?
But
A lot more than I've
IKEA,
said Swedish.
I don't know that IKEA, like that people, because Swedish Fish, Swedish Chef, it includes Swedish. So like it's a more natural, immediate assumption or immediate connection. ABBA's a bit of a stretch, probably. IKEA's way up there. That's a good one.
Corey goes, Totina's party pizzas are still a thing and ate regularly at my house. I want to go to that.
I mean, they're unreal.
I want to go to his house. Corey, can I come over?
They're unreal. Like
just a high chair for Max. Rosie's
like that kind
fine,
of the crisp nature of the crust.
Unreal. Reggie Wayne joins us in 30. Kevin and Query here on a Wednesday.
Hey there.
on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Reggie Wayne in 25 minutes. I'm trying to think, have we ever had Reggie on? I know you certainly, Jake, have had a lot of radio history with him, but I don't think we've had him on this show.
We did my old place of employment. We did a weekly Reggie Wayne show.
It was must listen for me.
Was it 2 or 3 years in a row we did it? I think it might have been.
It was
3
Tuesdays,
years.
right?
That sounds right. I can't recall, Kevin, to be honest with you, like whether or not we just kind of BS'd with him or whether or not he gave pretty good information.
I thought it was pretty good info. You know, the thing about Reggie, he is extremely reluctant to do anything from a media standpoint. And I think in his current position as a position coach on an NFL team, he's even more reluctant. I've been working on this for what seems like over a year at this point. But when he does speak, I think it's gold.
Yeah, I mean, he's
great perspective, honest, unfiltered.
I have a question for him that I've asked. It's kind of a go-to question for me when talking to coaches that were former players. And that is, I mean, I'll just say what it is now, and then we'll have him on in 25 minutes. But I think one of the things that is really hard for guys that were, and gals, that were great players is they automatically assume, like sometimes I think it's difficult for them, maybe it's illuminating to them, to work with younger players and realize that what was instinctive for them is not for the people that they're working with. So you're watching a player and you're like, dude, like, why did you not just make that cut? What do you mean? Well, as soon as you saw them break that way, you should have immediately been making that cut. And that's like a second nature probably to a guy like a Reggie Wayne or Marvin Harrison, and that's what separates them. And I think sometimes it's hard for those guys to realize that what separated them because it was instinctive and natural to them or embedded in them through countless hours of repetition is not automatically instinctive for everybody.
You know, I think two things that Reggie possesses that has helped him make this transition to being an NFL coach. One, education major. He often mentions that. Like there is a teaching part of him that he wants to have here in this second chapter of his life here after his playing career. The other, and this gets back to the point you just made, Jake, Reggie Wayne, in my opinion, is a Hall of Famer. But he's not a Hall of Famer because he's Calvin Johnson's size and speed. He is you go out to Colts practice, you look at Reggie Wayne, hell, even as a player, Reggie didn't run 4.3 at the combine. Reggie's not 6'3" and 210 pounds. You know, physically, he's not Anthony Richardson. Hell, he's not Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce from a size standpoint. Obviously, his route running, beyond precise. His hands never dropped anything. So those are attributes that are tremendous. But it's not like he just was born on third base athletically. And, I mean, certainly, I guess he was, he is a rare athlete. But, he's not the Calvin Johnson, the Tyreek Hill type of a wideout. So I do think that can help him teach to what is a very, very young room.
Speaking of, by the way, born on third base, do you know Reggie Wayne's favorite baseball team?
St. Louis Cardinals, correct?
That's correct. Also, do you know the one thing about Reggie Wayne that he will never – I'll ask him today. He will not tell. He will not tell. There's one thing about Reggie Wayne's life that he will not divulge to anyone.
He will not share who screwed up the Tracy Porter interception.
Which one do you think it was?
I think it was Reggie.
Do you really?
I don't know. I could be wrong on that. Hopefully he still comes on.
I think I told you this before. I've done this before, and it always marvels me. By the way, Reggie Wayne will not tell anybody what his middle name is. He claims that no one will ever find that out. I have always found it interesting that in that Super Bowl, the Tracy Porter interception, I know I've done this before, but it's worth repeating because I find it fascinating. Maybe my brain is the only one that finds things like this fascinating. But in the Super Bowl, Indianapolis versus New Orleans, Peyton Manning, his father, had been a quarterback of the New Orleans Saints and grew up in the New Orleans area. throws a pass late in the game to try to defeat the New Orleans Saints to Reggie Wayne, who grew up a New Orleans Saints fan because he's a native of New Orleans, and the pass was intercepted by Tracy Porter, who had played collegiately at Indiana, thus defeating Indianapolis in the Super Bowl and allowing for a Super Bowl victory for the quarterback of the Saints, which is Drew Brees, who had also played collegiately in the state of Indiana. I just always found that interesting.
Do you need to catch your breath after that?
Towel yourself off a little bit.
What's that?
Yeah, workout for the day is complete.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and head out.
One thing to note, quarterback update-wise, and I want to stay away from Taylor this segment. You're 5 practices in. Richardson missed a day. He got all 18 starting reps yesterday. Based off my charting through 5 practices, Gardner Minshew, 42 starting reps. Anthony Richardson, 39. So it has been a very even battle through the first 5 practices. Jake, when we talked at the start of camp, I pointed to Tuesday as in yesterday and Thursday as in tomorrow as the days of, do we start to see a change? And I asked Shane Steichen yesterday, we're now into week 2 of camp. Are we going to start to see a quarterback rep change? Because you would think at some point in August, you want to settle on a guy and start to commit more and more reps to him. And Steichen played it a little close to the vest and said, that's something we are discussing as a staff. So curious when we go out there tomorrow, certainly Saturday and Sunday, as we get closer to that preseason opener, does that change? Right now, Steichen's been a man of his word. He said coming into camp, they'd flip-flop, and they've done that. They have definitely done that, even with Richardson missing an entire day. But does that change? How much does that change now into week 2 as the preseason opener gets here on August 12th?
Kevin, do you remember when the Tennessee Titans drafted Malik Willis?
Yeah,
and
last year, right?
Ryan Tannehill was the incumbent.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan Tannehill, I think, still had some, there was still some tread on the tires there, and he's going to get another opportunity this year. But Ryan Tannehill basically came out and said, it's not my job to mold a young quarterback. Like, he can, this year, I remember at the Indianapolis 500, Agustin Canapino is a rookie. Callum Eilot's a second-year driver. Their teammates, Ryan Marine, my colleague, asks Callum Eilot, what sort of things can you teach Agustin Canapino to help him through his rookie year in Indy? And Callum Eilot goes, I don't know, man. Nobody helped me. He can figure it out. Oh, okay. There is no way, shape, or form any evidence to believe that Gardner Minshew has any of that in him, right?
I would agree.
Like Gardner Minshew, I think that it's one thing to teach a quarterback by sitting him down and going, okay, let's look at film and whatever else. But there's also something to be said about just teaching a younger quarterback just by having him watch the way in which you're going about things, the rapidity with which you're going through your reps, and the flow and the feel and the cadence and everything else. And, as of right now, Kevin, to your point, there is a clear disparity there between when Minshew is out on the field and Richardson, just in terms of the overall pacing, right, and the way that they're doing things.
I said this back kind of when Minshew was signed and I guess Richardson was drafted. I felt like Minshew checked so many boxes that you wanted in whatever role you envisioned for him this year. Minshew started 12 games as a rookie. So when Richardson gets in there, assuming he does this season, he can obviously be a sounding board of, hey, this is what it was like for me as a rookie starter. He has been in games, started games where Shane Steichen's been the play caller. So that obviously would be helpful, I think, to Anthony Richardson. He obviously has been a backup. He's been a starter. So for all those reasons, I just think Minshew is wired in the right way. Obviously, he wants to be the starter, certainly. But at the same time, I think he'll be pretty understanding if the direction goes the other way and realizing that there has to be a big picture view for this organization at some point, I would argue, pretty early in the season. All right, Reggie Wayne's going to join us in 15 with him and Bob.
What do you think his middle name is?
Somebody was tweeting Da Vinci, Nick says. Is that right?
I don't know.
It's just kind of random. Yeah, shout out to Nick here, Da Vinci. By the way, Elvis King said his name is Elvis King. He was born 11 days after Elvis passed.
Really? Okay.
So Reggie Wayne in 15. That means let's do the pop quiz next because we've got Bob Kravitz on the other side of Reggie. So 4-pack of tickets to the State Fair. Phone lines are now open. 317-239-1070. Pop quiz on the other side before Reggie.
Built on principle, union by choice. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Have you studied? Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with Kevin and Query. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
By the way, got this text. Jake, I went to school with Elvis King. His middle name is Aaron. That's pretty awesome.
We'll have a social by 9:30.
I don't believe, by the way, I know that Reggie Wayne, like people have said that it's Da Vinci. I don't think that that's correct. I think he had said once when we did the radio show that he doesn't know where the origin of it is, but that is not actually his middle name. I could be wrong. Well, I'm going to ask him.
Jake, we got to do this pop quiz pretty quick. Reggie Wayne is going to join us here in about 10 minutes, so give us a number.
Reginald Da Vinci Wayne, by the way.
1 through 8.
He was 87, so we'll go with 8.
JJ.
Hey, good morning, fellas. Slide the W. What's going on?
Can we hang up on him, Mark?
I think he already wins. Then we have to do the quiz.
JJ, congrats on the win.
Thanks.
JJ, I'll lead you
it only
off.
Counts as one.
I'll lead you off with a Cubs question right off the box, JJ. No pressure here. You ready?
Let's go.
7 home runs last night in their 20-9 win over the Reds. When was the last time the Cubs hit 7 home runs in a game? Did they do it in 1930, 1957, 1998, or they had never previously done it?
1998.
Try again, JJ. Think of something that might be a first.
Gee, Mark.
Never previously done it.
Mark Dykton chiming in to help a Cubs fan. I don't think
yeah.
Mark's ever offered a clue on the pop quiz. All right, here, JJ. Number 2, among yesterday's MLB trade deadline deals, the Padres acquired left-handed pitcher Rich Hill. I can't believe he's still in the league. From the Pirates. The Padres are the 13th different team Hill will play for over his 19-year Major League career. Only one player has played for more teams. I think he was Team USA's best pitcher in the recent Olympics. Name the player who played for 14 Major League teams. Mike Morgan, Octavio Dotel. I loved his windup. Edwin Jackson or the left-handed Matt Stairs?
Octavio Dotel.
Big old windup.
Okay. Question 3. Last night, Houston Astros got their 16th no-hitter in history. Framber Valdez threw it, blanking the Guardians 2-0. The Astros had 2 no-hitters last season, but both were combined. Name the last Astros starter to complete a no-hitter solo. Justin Verlander, Christian Javier, Mike Scott, or Nolan Ryan?
Justin Verlander.
All right, number 4 here. Valdez, JJ, needed just 93 pitches to complete his no-no last night. Name the last pitcher, who we mentioned earlier in the show, who needed fewer pitches than Valdez to finish off a no-no. Was it Dennis Martinez, David Cone, Philip Humber, or Darryl Kyle?
I was listening to you earlier, and I believe you guys said David Cone.
Thank you, JJ.
Nice. All right, JJ, sticking with that city as a theme, the Las Vegas Aces beat Atlanta last night to improve to 24-2 on the WNBA season. Only one other WNBA team has opened the season with a 24-2 start. Was it the LA Sparks in 2002, the Houston Comets in 98, the Minnesota Lynx in 2013, or the Phoenix Mercury in 2009?
All good, but I believe it was the LA Sparks.
Cynthia Cooper and Cheryl Swoops, I would have guessed, for that duo, right?
As I said, sticking with this theme of the city that had been the previous questions.
Nice. Man, Darryl Kyle had 83 pitches.
I like Darryl Kyle. He's a nice guy. He was with the Cardinals when I was there.
Yeah. Okay. Stay on the line, JJ, with Mark hand-holding. It felt like it was Mark walking across the street with his girls with that one.
Yeah.
He got number 1 right.
Let's go!
He got Verlander right.
Loud and proud.
And he got David Cone correct. 88 pitches.
Correcto.
So Valdez is 93, the second fewest, or the fewest since David Cone did that in 99. But the slip-ups, number 2 and 5, the guy that has played for more MLB teams than Rich Hill, he said Octavio Dotel. Now, as a Team USA pitcher from a couple years ago, Edwin Jackson.
You blew it!
Houston Comets, by the way, was right also. Did we mention that? Reggie Wayne going to join us next. He is, of course, the new wide receiver coach for the Indianapolis Colts. And I guess, Kevin, at that position, one of the things we want to ask him about, I would think, is Josh Downs as well, right? Just to see what he thinks.
And remember his affinity for Josh Downs. First off, I think Reggie first recognized Josh Downs as a fan, and that his Miami Hurricanes were getting torched by Josh Downs back a few years ago. But at the Combine in February, Chris Bauer was on one side of the field with the quarterbacks. Reggie was on the other side of the field with the wideouts, and Josh Downs in Reggie's mind was kind of lighting things up, and all of a sudden he came over to Chris Bauer and just started gushing about him like no other. So I think he is a big fan of Downs. By the way, speaking of the Edwin Jackson name, remember Edwin Jackson, the Colts linebacker?
I do.
Tragically died in a car accident?
He wasn't it he and an Uber driver both?
I think that is right. And refresh my memory. I know it's not the most uplifting. Darryl Kyle's death was...
Darryl Kyle passed in, I believe it was in... I'm trying to think of where they were playing. I think it wasn't Arizona. It might have been Chicago, actually. I think it was Chicago against Cubs. He passed in his hotel room of a heart condition.
That's right.
And Joe Girardi was the manager at the time that had to announce to everybody that the game had been canceled. And then his wife, Flynn, his widow, that year the Cardinals, behind Matt Morris's pitching and Ricky Ankiel's play, the Cardinals made the playoffs. They played against Arizona, and some wacky morning show in Arizona got a hold of Flynn Kyle and called her in St. Louis and asked if she needed a date to the game on the air. Yeah. I think that might have been the last bit they did. Rightly so.
Yeah, that is awful. Does not do that justice at all. Okay, Reggie Wayne, he's going to join us on the other side. Bob Kravitz at 9:30. Kevin and Query on a Wednesday.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
It is 9 o'clock in Indianapolis. For that matter, it's 9 o'clock everywhere in the Eastern time zone. My name is Jake Query. Kevin Bowen, of course, the other voice you hear on this program. That's why it's called Kevin and Query. It took years of marketing research to come up with that name. And Mark Dykton not only controls the handles for us, but he also answers the phones, which right now on the Payless Liquors hotline is where we find the wide receiver coach of the Indianapolis Colts. His name needs no introduction in this town. It's also in the Ring of Honor, and probably someday will end up in Canton as well. Reggie Wayne joins us on the program. Reggie, first off, thanks for joining us this morning. How are things with you?
Everything's good. It's your typical training camp. Even as a coach, as a player, it all sucks. But at the same time, you can find time to get better, come together as a team, and this is actually where it all makes sense, to be honest with you. You're away from your family. You've been putting all the hard work in the summer. And now this is that final piece of the summer, of the spring, where you put it all together.
Reggie, I'm not going to lie. I had you pegged for after year one. I thought you'd be on a beach with the Corona in hand for a bulk of 2023. You decided not to do that. I'm sure you did that at some point this year, but you are not doing that right now, obviously. Why'd you come back?
For a couple of reasons. One, there was some unfinished business just with this organization, what it means to me, what this fan base means to me. I just felt like I needed to come back and do it again. And then the other part was I feel like I owe it to these players, I owe it to these players that, that wasn't the coach standard last year. Not with myself, not with the outcome of the season. And I felt like that's not the way I wanted to go out. I wanted to go out swinging. I felt like I watched 4 pitches go past me last year. You know what I mean? And they all, and one of them was a ball, but the rest of them were strikes. You know what I'm saying? And I just wanted to, do it for these players to come back, have a different mentality, and help trying to turn this thing around.
And Reggie, with that, the difference between last year and this year, I think even the Colts would admit this, is that it is more of a total reset. I mean, you've got obviously a young quarterback in Anthony Richardson. You've got some young receivers that you're working with that we'll get to. But does that mean that psychologically for you to come back, that you had to say to yourself, I'm buying in for more than a year here. This is a longer form project than what I originally set out for?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I really don't. There was some point in time last year, at the end of last year, when everything was doing its thing, I did want to go have a Corona and sit on the beach. You know what I'm saying? But it's one of those things where, like, I was new to this last year. I was new to it. I kind of came in, and I won't say rushed, but I kind of came in last minute, in the middle of, draft process, not really understanding what to do and how to do it. I had an idea. I mean, we all play, John Madden football growing up on PlayStation and all that stuff, but this is the real thing, and I didn't have an idea on what to do and how to do it. So I had this summer where I was able to sit down and kind of put some things together, and I said, man, if I have a chance to go back and do it, and all this was before Coach Steichen was here, I said, if I have a chance to go back and do it, this is how I would do it. And I mapped everything out, you know what I'm saying? And I was just telling myself, like, damn, if I'd have had this game plan last year, maybe my room, would at least played a little better, and maybe we could have won a game just on my room, you know what I mean? But it is a young team, and we just got to be patient. I think camp is going well so far. Guys are locked in, especially my room. My room is playing well. I just want to see if they can sustain that level of play, and if not, get better and better each day. And man, I'm excited. I am. I mean, how can you not be? It is a young team for the most part, young key additions, and man, I just want to. At the end of the day, all right. At the end of the day, I just want these players to just say, like, "Damn, Reggie was a damn good coach for me," and for me, that's all that matters.
Has it been challenging, Reggie? Reggie Wayne is our guest. I always ask this of guys that were great players and transitioned into coaching. Did it take a while for you to realize or have to adjust to the fact that what was instinctive to you as a player and also the work ethic you had as a player does not automatically translate to every player in the NFL? And for young guys, were there times that you had to realize that you were assuming they just automatically knew what you had known as a player?
Well, I don't assume anything. You know what I mean? It's the old cliche, if you assume, you become the first three letters of that word.
Right.
Back in 2018, when I came here and helped the Colts out during training camp, and that was kind of like a semi, trial and error for me. I was here with Coach Frank, and just seeing if this was something that I could possibly do. And I was out there coaching the receivers, and I kind of had that mindset, like, man, just do it like this. If you do it like this, it will work for you. Why are you doing it? And it was kind of, I was like, man, why are they not listening? On why can't they get it done? And it was kind of like weird, And some of the best advice I got was from Chris Ballard. Chris came, to me one day, and he said, Reg, you know what? I've been watching you since you've been here, man. And he said, you can do this. You can do this without a question. And he said, you're going to be damn good at it. He said, but always remember that all these players, if any, can't do what you did. Like, that's what made you special, right? And he said, so just remember, like, all these players, you have to lock in their own, as I would tell my room, you're an Avenger. What is your power? You know what I'm saying? What's your special powers? You have to lock in their own powers and see what they can do and do best. And that made me sit down and think. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't do that. And that brought me, that even pushed me on forward to my kids. Reggie Jr. playing football, like, hey, maybe Reggie Jr. is just Reggie Jr. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? So don't think they can do all the special things that you was able to do. Just find out what they can do well and keep it shining. You know what I mean? So I did have to take a step back then, and I never forgot that. And I think about that every day as I'm teaching them. But man, these guys are so talented, man. I really do believe that they all are special in their special way. And I remind them all the time, like, we all know everybody won't be here at the end of the day, but while you have this opportunity, that millions of people want to get, you might as well just make the best of it. And that's all I'm doing. I'm just trying to make the best of it and trying to get as much as these guys' secret powers out there on display.
Reg, when you speak to the talent, you speak to the secret powers in your room. I don't know, it might be foolish to say considering one day you will be in Canton, but is there any attribute of any of the wideouts currently in your room that you wish you had when you were playing?
Oh man, it's a whole bunch. I look at Ashton Doolin, the guy's a workhorse. I say this guy he could have played with us at any point in time in my career here. Just the way he works. I look at Michael Strawn. I mean, I tell him every day, I wish I had your size and speed. I'd probably be going on year 20-something right now and playing in football, Look at Michael Pittman, his will to do it, right? His work ethic, his will to do it. I tell everybody all the time, I'm like, listen, if I want to go in the foxhole, one of the guys I want next to me is Michael Pittman. Like, that's just his determination to get it done. Like all these guys, they all are special. Alec Pierce, man, his attention to detail, right? And wanting to go in there and wanting to be good and wanting to do it over and over again and wanting to try new things. Like, all these guys are special. You know what I mean? And it's just trying to get them to play together. And they're doing a good job of it. They're looking out for each other. They're helping each other out. There was times in my career where I didn't have that. I didn't have everybody in our room kind of like leaning on each other, helping each other. These guys, every single guy in my room is really talking to each other and helping each other out. And if a guy, has a brain fart, you can't forget it. You got one guy, oh, no, you got to do it this way. Like, that's different, man, from what I was used to. It was either, it was every man for themselves for the most part of my career, so it was, you either learn it or you get put on the bench, but this group here is special. And I will say it was like that last year too, when we had, Paris Campbell. He was a good leader for the room, so it's one of those things where I enjoy that part because it helps my coaching out even better.
Reggie Wayne is with us. Still weird for me to say Coach Reggie Wayne. I think number 87 is probably how most people.
Me too.
Most people, of course, remember Reg in this town. 11 years ago, I think it goes without saying what you meant for Andrew Luck in that rookie season of 2012. You certainly had some decisions on your own end after that 2011 season. But critical to Andrew in that 11-5 year and making the playoffs. What is your message to your room about working with Anthony Richardson, working with a young quarterback, working with a rookie, and what you guys need to provide him?
Just be there for him. Help. Make him look good. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to have some tough throws. Go have some tough throws, and we got to make some tough catches. We got to help him out. I remember when Andrew Luck came in, and obviously I was around for a while when Andrew came in, and kind of had my foot cemented in this game, for a little bit. But I remember when he came in, it was like damn, Andrew Luck's in the building. He's replacing Peyton Manning, and this guy's got so much pressure. Everybody's gonna be looking at him. He's got a bullseye on him. And I just remember the first day I met him. And I could still see the smile on his face and didn't know him not one bit, but he had a big smile on his face. And, he was like, hit me with the Mr. Reggie, nice to meet you. I had to get that straight first. Don't call me Mr. Reggie, But I just told him, I was like, hey, man, like, don't worry about nothing. I got the offense. And when you're ready, you just come to me and say, Reggie, I got it, right? And that took about 11 or 12 weeks. Every week I would check in with him, like, hey, you good? You want to take over? And he's like, nah, not yet. I'm still trying to get my feet wet. Cool. So I was that voice for him. I was that leader for him until like week 11 or week 12. And I went to him and he was like, all right, let me take a swing at it. All right, it's all yours. So, my thing to my room was like, hey, be that voice. Hold everybody accountable. Be that voice. Let Anthony get his feet wet. Let him learn the system. Let him feel comfortable. Let him, be that leader that he think he can be. Because to try to be a leader of men and try to learn this playbook, right? Every day you got all these errors that you're making, and then you have this roller coaster of emotions, good days, bad days, and then at the same time you're having a bad day, but you can't forget, like, man, you still got to uplift everybody because of your role on this team. Like, that can be tough. So sometimes you need that helping hand, and that's what I want my guys to be. I want them to be that helping hand until Anthony has his foot in the ground. And Gardner Minshew does a great job of that also. But we know how much we've invested into Anthony Richardson, and we just need to be there for him. And not just my room, every other room in here too. There should be a leader in every single room, and sometimes there's two leaders in every single position, and everybody needs to come together and build that bridge for him.
Reggie, I think that, it's probably dangerous a lot and unfair to compare one player to another, as a direct comparison. So I'm not trying to do that. But as fans and as media here, we have precedent recently of seeing a franchise quarterback that's selected high in the draft that the keys are handed over towards. Obviously, you were an integral part in the acclamation for Andrew Luck. But Andrew Luck had come in with a lot of reps under his belt in college. Anthony Richardson does not. Can you kind of give us a glimpse from your perspective as to where there might be differences based on that precedent of a young player taking over the reins and where there might be similarities that you see?
Honestly, right about now, I don't see any difference. I mean, when Andrew came in, guess what? Andrew was practicing. He had rough practices. the only dilemma or the only big significance that I can see that's different would be myself. Andrew had a skill position player that played for a long time, so he had a safety net, right? In my room, the guy with the most experience is Michael Pittman Jr. for the most part. You know what I mean? He's still a young player, right? So that would be the biggest difference. Like, they're all going to struggle. People think Andrew Luck didn't struggle. Andrew Luck struggled. There was days that, Bruce Arians would look at him and it was almost like his eyes was like like he was something from Men in Black, the way he looked at it. Like, Andrew struggled. So, like, Anthony Richardson is going to struggle. But one thing that Andrew did was, after he struggled, he came back. He didn't get gun shy. He still slung the ball around the yard. And I don't see no difference than Anthony Richardson. Right? Yeah. Is there pressure on him there? I mean, it's a quarterback drafted, the third pick in the draft. He's going to struggle. So it's one of those things where we just got to take the ups and downs and live with it. They're going to be mistakes. You mentioned yourself, Andrew Luck had a lot of games. Anthony Richardson doesn't. But us coming together, putting him in the best situation on the field and hoping that his teaching and his, play every day in practice will turn that wheel for him to get him going.
I want to go back to Reggie. Reggie Wayne's our guest on the Payless Liquors Hotline. I want to go back to something you said about when you were playing. You came in, obviously, there was already a veteran receiver there in Marvin Harrison, or a guy who was entrenched, certainly. And you guys were a great duo, one of the best in league history. And I would assume there's a level of competitiveness there. But when you talked about the camaraderie in the room, then versus now, can you elaborate on that, on what was different when you were playing, and was it to a negative?
Yeah, there's a big difference. I think the times have changed. We all know that, right? They got all these different rules and CBA rules and all these different. If I look at it and I sit back like, damn, what is the big difference, right? And it's like, this will be considered like a country club now. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, we had 2-a-day practices. Everybody know that. We had 2 hours and 20, 2 hours and 30-minute practices. They don't necessarily do that now. Like, these guys got so much at their disposal, like, damn, they should play for a long time. A guy, willing. Like, for us, it was like we didn't have all of the extra, amenities that these guys have. I take my hat off to them. Like, that'll help you play for a very long time. I sit back and I tell the guys in the room that may not be high on the chain of command, I'm like, practices are shorter, way shorter than it was when I was playing, right? And by it being shorter, that means there's less opportunities for those low-end guys to get reps, almost to the point to where it's not necessarily fair. When I played practices for so long that everybody got a ton of reps, you're going to find ways to get reps because you're out there for 2.5 hours. Now you chop that 2.5 hours, you take an hour off to an hour and 30 minutes. Like, them dudes don't get many reps. So the reps that they do get, man, you don't have time for mistakes. And to a certain degree, you're like, damn, that ain't cool. That's not fair. But that's what they're brought up into. You know what I mean? So it's different. But I also understand the way that, all these, analytics and numbers and, all the data that's out there now, this is the way it goes. And I feel like, me personally, is like, man, I don't need a machine to tell me when I'm tired, but that's just what we're up against now. I sit back and I look, and I'm like, man, the guys look fast, they look fresh. Maybe it's all the new technology stuff that got them that way. But then again, I sit back and I look on the other side, and I look at it like, damn, such and such only got 3 reps a day. How can I fit them in? And it can be unfair to me at times. So that's one of the big things. But at the end of the day, it's still football. You go out there and you play. You give it everything you got. Whenever you do get your opportunities, you make the best of it, and you move forward.
Reggie, last one from me, and appreciate the time here on this off day for you guys, which I know is not really an off day for the coaching staff. I think one of the more surreal sporting environments I've ever been in, and certainly one of the greatest individual performances I've ever seen, was that 2012 game against the Packers. Do you still have the orange gloves? Where are the orange gloves from that Sunday afternoon inside of Lucas Oil Stadium?
Those orange gloves, after that game was over, I immediately drove over to Chuck Pagano's house and handed it to him. Those orange gloves are hopefully somewhere in reaching distance in Chuck Pagano's house, and maybe on his mantle. I don't know. Who knows? It might be in his dirty clothes laundry. I don't know.
You gotta have Tina let him put them on the mantle. Come on now, Tina.
I would hope Miss Tina will put them up there, but who knows? Chuck probably puts them on every now and then and try to live his dreams. I don't know. You know what I mean? But that was an iconic game. It was a fun game. Obviously, a lot of us was playing out there with heavy hearts, and we were out there playing with a lot of emotion. And there's just one of those times where I was locked in, and then and enjoyed the game of football, the game that I grew up playing since I was 7 years old, and enjoyed and loved, and just didn't expect all this extra that came with it. I just wanted to live, fulfill my dream, and that was just stepping onto a field, playing for a team. I remember the first team, my first dream I had of playing football, and it wasn't the Colts. I won't share what team that was, but it was me playing for a certain team, and that's when the bug first hit me, and I lived that dream, and man, it was great. I enjoyed it.
Reggie, at that time when you had that game, in the Orange Glove game, we were in the middle of doing a weekly radio show together. I can't remember if we did that for 2 or 3 seasons. I think it might have been 3 years that we did a show with you, which was fun. I always enjoyed it. I always enjoyed your transparency. The only thing that you never divulged that we asked over the 3 years was your middle name. And I tried like hell to try to find out what it was. And people are now telling me that it's out there and it's Da Vinci. Is that right?
I don't know where you heard that from. I don't know where you heard that from, but, keep digging. You may find it one day.
The coach isn't budging, Jake. The player wasn't budging. The coach isn't budging either.
Yeah, you'll find out one day, but keep digging. You're close. You're close, but no cigar.
DeQuincy. DeQuincy. I got one letter wrong. It's DeQuincy.
Nah, I don't like the way that sounds either. Nope, that ain't it.
All right, fair enough.
I tell you, if you can get in contact with Miss Wayne, my mom, for the right price, she may give it to you. But you really gotta find her in the pickle to get that out of her.
Mom accepts bribes. That's what we've learned in this, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Fair enough.
Reggie, thank you, man. Safe travels back up to Grand Park, and appreciate the time here.
All right, appreciate it.
That's Reggie Wayne right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. Jake, I'm trying to think of other sporting events and individual performances that I've been fortunate to witness in person that ranks up there with what Reggie did in that. I think it was 12 for 212 yards. I think I was right. Maybe 13 catches for 212 yards against Charles Woodson. I think people forget that. It's not like he was going against some chump. That was a Hall of Famer. On the other side, obviously the first game post Chuck Pagano's leukemia diagnosis, I can, and again, I've only been on this earth for 33 years, but nothing compares to that.
Yeah, it was way up there in the ranks of this town in particular. I mean,
his relationship with Chuck, all of it.
Yeah, well, the gloves, and then the fact that he was going to get fined if he wore the gloves again. It was like, are you kidding me? Because orange was obviously the the color for the leukemia awareness.
Mm-hmm.
He got them. I think it was a Dolphins player. It might have been a
Browns or
player.
Dolphins. I kind of forget who it was.
Yeah.
Remember the go-go gadget touchdown he had, like by the goal line, where he kind of reached out. It's one of those no-no-nos because when you reach out like that, the defender can just slap the ball away. And Andrew Luck had some great comments after that game of it just turned into I just throw it anywhere in his vicinity, and I know he's going to catch it.
The one thing about Reggie Wayne, too, that I remember when he was a player, and I remember discussing this with him once when we did that show, and maybe I'm the 1% that even remembers this or noticed it at the time, but I remember asking him about it, and he's like, man, I didn't know that anybody noticed that, but you're right. He wore a different helmet than everyone else, and it was a cooler-looking face mask. Do you remember that? Like the NFL kind of transitioned.
I'm trying to picture it.
So the NFL transitioned to more of like a rounded face mask, kind of, especially later in his career, and they were kind of goofy looking. And he always wore the old, like Riddell style, rubbered metal face mask that was squared, and it just looked cool. It looked cool, and he was like, "Man, I agree. I think it looks cool."
Thank you to Christian Edwards from the Colts PR department. He was pretty persistent in trying to get Reggie on with us. It's been something we've been working on for the last year or so. So thank you to him. Thank you to Reggie, of course, for the time. And that will certainly be up on the podcast. Bob Kravitz, by the way, going to join us here in a few. Let's do a morning check down before we get to Bob.
The morning check down. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Morning checkdown's pretty easy. Beaver won last night. They beat beat Phoenix by a bucket. They play Connecticut on Friday, and
I think that's it, right?
Reds
Just
fell
moving
short.
on?
Yeah, Reds fell short. Cute fella won. There you go.
Yeah, that's it, right, Mark? Nothing else.
I didn't even get to do a switch transition or anything.
I think that covers everything.
I should hit the switch at least.
Bob's waiting.
Oh, wait a minute. What happened?
Gonna keep Bob waiting like this, Mark?
You guys hit a button?
Wisdom will touch
Is it the plop? Can you play the plop?
Absolutely unloaded.
You know what I think of that? Here's what I think of that.
Luke Shambi needs the rest of the voice out.
What are you seeing right there, Mark?
Is the YouTube camera catching that?
You're saying you're bleeding, but I'm also number one?
I have a hangnail, and I'm on blood thinners, so I've got blood all over my finger, and I'm showing it to you because I'm showing you which finger it is.
Yeah. I appreciate being number one in your power rankings.
Jake Darrell texted us earlier. Shout out to the Indy Thunder down in the Beat Ball tournament. 3-0 through pool play, I believe. So another impressive effort from them as they are, I think, Oklahoma, Norman, maybe? I think that's right.
You would think the Thunder in Oklahoma, they'd feel right at home.
Yeah, man, makes a whole lot of sense. Mark, we've moved on. Colts
happening?
practice back on the field tomorrow, number 6, 9 a.m. the start time for that. So we'll chat with Bob Kravitz on the other side. I know he's got some opinions on the Jonathan Taylor situation. I believe his latest on Pat McAfee as well we can touch on. Bob joins us next.
Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Jake, how would you describe going from Reggie Wayne to Bob Kravitz?
That's a good question.
Outside of similar athletic accomplishments.
Like going from, I would say it's like going from, I'm trying, who's it like
Shows
really
that
popular musician? I know. I was trying to think of like some like super cool musician in going from that into Gordon Lightfoot.
Oh, I was going to say Reggie Wayne to T.Y. Hilton. That was going to be much more complimentary.
No, I mean that as a compliment to Bob. I'm saying two different styles.
Bob, you take that as a compliment?
I don't know how to take that, to be honest with you. I'm completely befuddled.
Not the first time Jake has befuddled someone in his life. Bob, let's start here. How was the golf outing on Monday as once again raising a lot of money for ALS?
Yeah, it went great. We made over $80,000 for ALS. It was, the auction afterwards, there was not a dry eye in the house. So one gentleman paid full price for a 7-day luxury trip to Mexico and then donated it to one of our ALS heroes. So it was a beautiful day, and not just the weather. It was just a great, great occasion for everybody.
You did your mom proud, Bob. That's all that we ever want to do in life, right?
Exactly right. Thank you, buddy.
Hey, I want to begin with this. Your latest column, a guy that we both like in Pat McAfee and who we saw from the very beginning of his rise of a meteoric career here. But you basically were saying that you thought this week, maybe for the first time, quite frankly, in his career, that he erred.
Yeah, he really, you would think that he would have learned something from the canal swim, where he took complete ownership, apologized profusely, and made a better person of himself afterwards. I find not only was his tweet ridiculously insensitive, but his non-apology apology made it even worse. So I think, I don't know if Bob Iger or whoever has to get him in a room, but he needs to just apologize and move on. And look, he's a married man like I am. We're used to apologizing. This comes naturally to us. So that's what he needs to do, and I really think he erred. I understand that you need to be edgy and you need to go to the edge, but I think he took one step beyond, and he's fallen into the abyss now with this, as defensive as he's been.
Again, Bob Kravitz is with us. The latest, it is substack.com/ I guess I want to make sure I have this right. Let me start over. bobkravitz.substack.com. Is that correct, Bob?
Correct. That is correct, sir.
Okay, bobkravitz.substack.com. Obviously, along with the McAfee latest piece, certainly everything Jonathan Taylor related. If you don't mind, Bob, I want to start, I guess, let's go two sides with Taylor. Let's start here. Will you evaluate how Jonathan Taylor / his team has handled this situation?
Oh, miserable. I mean, I keep waiting for an adult to show up. And, you've got Jonathan wearing that, just sort of glowering at practice. I'll be honest with you. If I was Chris Ballard, I would tell him, come in, do your rehab, and go the hell home. Because him being there just creates a toxic atmosphere. What do we do during practice? Where's Jonathan? Is he smiling? Is he how is he interacting with players? Usually not at all. But I think him just being there creates a toxic atmosphere. So I think he's handled it poorly. Jim Irsay has handled it miserably. He needs to get his fingers out of the pie. And clearly his trainer, his agent, who I last saw was tweeting that they should bring the Redskins name back in Washington, which should tell you everything you need to know about this dude. I think they've all handled it really poorly.
Okay, then the other side of it, and then you've hinted a little bit at it there, but how would you evaluate how the Colts / Jim Irsay has handled this?
Well, terrible. I mean, Jim has been center stage in all of this. He's dropping information all over the place, on and off the record. I think he's put Jonathan Taylor into a corner. And if they go with this non-football related injury, I mean, that's a declaration of war as far as I'm concerned. So nobody's going to win here. Nobody's going to win. I'd like to see Chris Ballard step in, be the adult in the room, and maybe knock out a short-term contract. Because let's be honest with you, this guy is not a $4.3 million running back. He is significantly more valuable than that. And it just seems to me that if you have some grown-ups running this thing, that something can still get done.
Is Chris Ballard the guy that's awkwardly stuck in the middle?
As always, you got to think he's just dying inside every time Jim says something publicly or even privately to his guys in the media. Chris, for the life of me, if this wasn't a job, if this wasn't one of 32 jobs, I don't know that Chris Ballard would put up with this, but it pays really well.
Bob, one of the things to me that is intriguing, and I want your thought on this. When Jim Irsay hired Jeff Saturday, his quote was, "Look, I don't know how sausage is made. I know football, but I don't know how sausage is made. I just know that I like sausage." It seems like he is the one that should then be aware that his fans don't care how the sausage is made. They just want to enjoy sausage on Sundays. So why consistently show us the ingredients and the kitchen?
I think something happened when he came out at that owners meeting, and this is just my guess, guys. Something happened when he came out at that owners meeting and spoke basically for all the owners about Dan Snyder. And I think he got a lot of positive reinforcement on that. And I think it made him feel like he was an important owner. He is one of the old school family owners, along with Rooney and Mara and all those folks. And I think it went to his head. And I just think this last year and a half, he's insinuated himself into virtually every situation, whether it's mandating the Sam Ehlinger play, getting rid of Reich, hiring Jeff Saturday. Now he's in the middle of all this nonsense with Jonathan Taylor, and it needs to stop.
Is he standing up? And credit to Kevin here, I believe, who was the first that planted this seed in my mind. But is Jim Irsay standing up in his mind, maybe unnecessarily, for the other owners and taking a stand against the running back revolt of 2023?
Well, look, he kind of did it when he said, "I'm not paying Lamar Jackson guaranteed money," even though he's going to get guaranteed money at some point. But yes, I think he's saying we signed the CBA however many years ago it was. You guys agreed to it. You can't. I mean, I don't disagree with them, but I think you're absolutely right, and I think Kevin is absolutely right that he feels like he is becoming sort of the spokesperson for the ownership group.
Again, Bob Kravitz is with us. His latest, bobkravitz.substack.com, his latest on Pat McAfee and that apology that Bob believes is necessary for Pat. Let's get into the Anthony Richardson, Gardner Minshew. Bob, we're 5 practices in. I think for the most part it's been a 50-50 split. I know you have been a proponent of waiting a little bit to put Anthony Richardson in the lineup. Colts-wise, do you think they have that same line of thinking? Do you think we'll see Gardner Minshew for X amount of games in 2023?
I think we're going to see Minshew for a couple of games. I think things will probably not go great. And I think, maybe after 5-6 games, maybe longer, we're going to see Anthony Richardson. Clearly the owner wants him out there. Clearly Steichen wants him out there. I mean, look, everybody wants him out there, but you can't put him in a position where he is likely to fail and have a long-term impact and have a long-term impact on him. You go back to Ryan Leaf. I talked to Ryan Leaf often. He said, you don't know how some of these guys are going to react to failure for the first time in their lives. And he obviously did not handle it well, and it was the end of his career. They just need to make sure that they're putting this kid in a good position to play well. If you put him out there early, you end up with another David Carr, or any one of those other quarterbacks who got out there too early and got their brain speed in. Remember, this is an offensive line that gave up 60 sacks last year. I realize they had statues back there, and it's not going to happen again. But this young man needs to be put in a position where he can succeed, or at least taste a little bit of success, and know going forward that he belongs.
Bob, on a total side note, this is just one of those random brain-dropping epiphanies that hits me from time to time.
Right.
You sound totally rejuvenated.
I am. I got my energy back. I feel it. I like being my own boss. I came home last night and I wrote McAfee and finished it up this morning. I was like, I don't have to ask anybody if I can write this. And I don't have to worry about the damn metrics. If they're good, they're good. If they're not, they're not. And, yeah, I also got a good night's sleep last night. So that had something to do with it. But
good for you, Bob. Seriously.
I feel rejuvenated. You're right.
Is it easier to write when you don't have handcuffs on?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it wasn't so much handcuffs is that I never knew if what I was writing was what they were looking for. And I was always worried about the metrics. And granted, I worry about the metrics now because this is the way I'm feeding my family. But, it's all on me. It's not on anybody else. I don't have to worry about placement of a story. I don't have to worry about graphics. I don't have to worry about timing. I just knock it out, send it out there. Hopefully I don't screw it up, and let people decide whether they want to subscribe or not, and I hope they will.
Okay, so here's what I decided. Going from Reggie Wayne to Bob Kravitz, from a music standpoint, is like going from Lenny Kravitz to Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, I like that.
Does that work?
Wow, yeah.
Hey, do you like Springsteen, Bob?
I'm a sports writer, man.
I'm going to see Springsteen a week from tonight at Wrigley Field.
Oh, my God. You got any openings?
Yeah, if you want to buy a ticket, I bought it. They were not expensive. I was surprised. I bought them in the secondary market. You're more than welcome to make the ride with us. My buddy Michael Weir and I.
I'll tell you, I've seen Bruce about 11 times. Yeah, I'm pretty hardcore. Well, let's be in touch because I may take you up on that, my friend.
Okay.
I think Bob's serious.
But here's
about
the
that.
thing, Bob. Bonsai trip. We're going up and back same night.
Same night?
Yeah.
That's okay. I'm not driving.
I was waiting for that part. Bob, last one. As Jake said, we just had Reggie Wayne on, and I'm probably putting you a hair on the spot here, so I apologize for that. But I said in the 11, 12 years that I've been covering the Colts, a little bit of the Pacers in this market, Reggie Wayne's Orange Glove effort in 2012 is, in my opinion, the greatest individual performance I've seen, and you got to factor in the Hollywood aspect to everything around it as well. What in your history of covering sporting events ranks up there with that?
Well, I think the Andrew Luck in the comeback against Kansas City rates right there. If you're talking about local sports,
yeah,
that one, what was it, 48-45 or something like that. That one ranks right up there off the top of my head.
Yeah, that is certainly a good one, and both those had big comebacks. Even the Green Bay game, not at that level from a playoff standpoint, but yeah, the Andrew Luck one as well. All right, Bob's latest again, bobkravitz.substack.com on Pat McAfee. Bob, congrats on the golf outing, how much money you guys raised. It's absolutely awesome. And more importantly, I echo what Jake said, and I've seen it firsthand out at training camp. It's been pretty cool to see, just the extra boost that you've had here as of late. So congrats on that.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you both.
It's Bob Kravitz right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. We'll do it one final time here. Kevin and Query on a Wednesday.
Gary on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I could have sworn I just threw to break. Short one here.
That was a short one.
Reggie Wayne, Bob Kravitz, both will be up on the podcast. I said this about Dwight Freeney, Jake, when you did the interview with him last week. Dwight and Reggie like to keep pretty low profiles from a media standpoint.
Yeah, and they're both great, right?
Oh, my gosh. Selfishly, I wish they didn't.
We call that a boomerang break, by the way. You threw it and it came right back. The Australians, for the 500, gave me a boomerang, and they really worked. Did you know that?
I haven't thrown one in a while, but I remember my Uncle Tad having one. We threw it in the backyard, and it did work.
You have to have a huge plot of land to do it because it takes it takes a pretty wide turn, and it doesn't automatically. You have to throw it a very certain way. It's extremely specific on how to do it. It's kind of an acquired skill.
We learned that the hard way in our neighborhood. A kid had a boomerang, went to throw it, cracked another kid's skull in the cul-de-sac.
Excuse me?
Yeah, kids went fleeing. Yeah, it was too close. He went to fling it right in the head. Blood instantly.
Boomerang made out of
wood.
Boomerangs originally were designed as like a hunting weapon, right? A hunting tool.
Well, looks like they need to hire.
I
had
a Nerf boomerang when I was a kid.
U.S. military get Mark's neighbor.
Like, what is it?
We come in peace, but Johnny's got his boomerang in his back pocket if things turn ugly.
Dennis the Menace on the front lines. Getting a slingshot, too.
So you had an authentic boomerang in the neighborhood.
I didn't have one. The neighbor did. And then the neighbor's kid got whacked in the head.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that the end of the boomerang?
It was a pretty bloody scene that summer. Yeah.
Kind of funny to hear Reggie Wayne's comments about how much training camp and I think even the type of athlete in those training camps has changed.
How about when I asked if there was like tension amongst the receiver locker room? There was a long pause there. Did you notice that?
Yeah, there was, but then I felt like none of his answer really hinted at that.
Right. I think he was just saying like times were different.
He talked about how much the athlete has changed over the years. I mean, again, it's crazy to put Reggie in like a different generation, but I mean, I guess he is. How old is he, Jake? 43?
Reggie Wayne would be, what was his rookie year?
Is it 01?
I'm trying to think. I was going to say 01 or 02, so that would have put him at, born in, 79? So that put him at 43, 42? It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, what's it list him as? Are you looking it up?
Yeah, I was also trying to look up Reggie Wayne Jr. Turns 45 in November.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was, he mentioned Reggie Wayne Jr. I was thinking, obviously, Marvin Harrison. Do you see the green jerseys Notre Dame's going to rock against Ohio State? I love them. Yeah. Do you hate them? Do you want both teams to lose?
Listen.
That was your 50th birthday party last year.
That's right.
Notre Dame, Ohio State.
That was actually a good game.
Shout out to Big Lug for having that on. I might have spent a little more time in that room than I did the party room. I fully admit.
I don't blame you. You didn't know anybody. I mean, I felt bad for you because it's all the guys I grew up with, and
Oh yeah, Byron, Farkas, Loves. The bingo card is out and about. Mark.
You know what? Notre Dame looked good in that game, and I think Notre Dame's going to be really good. I think they're going to be really good.
I got the quarterback transfer from Wake Forest, Sam Hartman.
He's a good player. That guy's a good player. Did you see yesterday the report? And I don't know that it's anything other than like a rumored Twitter meme or X or whatever it's called now, but that Clemson, Florida State, Oregon, Washington all rumored to go to the Big Ten.
Give me those names again.
Clemson, Florida State, Oregon, Washington.
Big Ten?
Yes. I don't believe that for a second, but that's
why. If you're Clemson and Florida, would you get out of your recruiting area for that?
I would tend to agree with
that. I get the money is probably great from a TV contract standpoint, but I mean, what's the streak that we're on? Is it? I think it's over a dozen years that the national champion has come out of the Southeast.
Yeah.
I mean, when was Ohio State's last national title?
I'm also going to. Well, Ohio State won it. Gosh, it's been that long ago when they had Dwayne Haskins. Wasn't he the one that led them to the national title? Or was it Cardell Jones? One of those two. It was Cardell Jones.
I mean, we're approaching almost 10 years.
I guess you're right, yeah. I personally think the Big Ten, if they end up adding 4, I truly, truly believe if I had to write down 4 names and put them in an envelope, and when the Big Ten adds 4 more teams, they're going to open it up, and if I went 4 for 4, I get $10 million, I would write down Oregon, Washington, Stanford, Notre Dame. That would be the 4 that I would.
Stanford coming without Cal?
That would be the one curveball there. But I think that Stanford would come in with Notre Dame and vice versa.
You talk about the ridiculous nature of this conference realignment outside of football.
The fact that BYU and Central Florida are conference rivals, yes.
I was reading yesterday that the State College Airport, obviously the location for Penn State, the runway is not big enough to fly a plane there filled with fuel to head to Los Angeles. So when Penn State makes their trips to USC and UCLA, they will have to bus to Harrisburg and or Pittsburgh.
Good Lord. I think about this too, and I do think that I've heard that like some of the smaller sports like cross country and track and field, they won't do the cross country. In other words, Minnesota's track team is not going to be like going on Tuesday night and playing at UCLA and coming back on Thursday and hosting Wisconsin. They'll do like invitationals where they're all there together for a week. They knock it all out, that kind of thing. But I mean,
so we're not going to get a USC Rutgers volleyball match on a Tuesday night in Piscataway.
Now, I mean that's some of that is my assumption. Or if you do, it's going to be once every like 4 years. You know what I mean? Can you imagine like? It's a bummer if you're a UCLA student athlete more than it is if you're a Wisconsin one. I mean, if you're at Wisconsin, it's pretty awesome. You're already playing the Big Ten schools you're used to. You're probably from the Midwest, and you get to go now and play in Bel Air and at SC and everything else. If you're a UCLA player, you're like, wait a minute. I thought I was going to be playing in, games in Eugene, Oregon, and at Arizona and Arizona State. And instead, I'm having to go now and play in November in Madison or Ann Arbor or West Lafayette. I mean, you got to wonder what it does for UCLA and USC's recruiting.
3 weeks from tomorrow, Notre Dame and Navy in Dublin.
The kid, the quarterback there used to be with the Wake Forest.
Why, Kevin? We have 2 minutes left. Why'd you bring that up?
Did I regret?
Move the ball.
Did I regret saying that? Can we rewind that, Mark?
Do you regret it? Did you not just hear?
By the way, feel free to rip me for this, Jake. I saw the announcement yesterday of the college game day lineup for this season. Isn't it time for Lee Corso to just hang it up? There are some obvious health concerns there, health limitations.
It is kind of sad that there's nobody within even the Corso family that would step in and be like, it's probably time.
I mean, think about how great it would be to do one final, headgear game. He can pick the game. Love college game day.
That's another first down. Throw down a pint.
I'm looking up the Delta State schedule because I want to see if I can get a
the Ninja Squirrels?
No, the Fighting Okra.
Oh, the Okra.
See if they're coming. They're not anywhere close to our area.
Jake, I'm surprised you didn't ask Reggie Wayne about Johnny King and how his development has been.
I know. I didn't want to put him on the spot though, because in all honesty, what if Reggie had been like, I'm not really that familiar with him.
Somebody said Reggie Wayne's middle name we should have asked is Elvis. Shouldn't we have asked if Elvis was the obvious middle name?
How great would that have been if Reggie's like, who? Johnny? Oh, yeah, he sits in the back left of the room, yeah. He doesn't say much.
Yeah, that's the guy that played for the Ninja Squirrels.
Thank you to Reggie Wayne. Thank you to Bob Kravitz. Again, Colts practice, nothing today. We'll be back up there tomorrow, 9 a.m. morning session. So for those that are coming out, gates open at 8. Stop by our tent. We are at the northwest corner. Do I have that right? Yeah, northwest corner of the 2 practice fields. So come over and say hi, and we'll be out there for the rest of the morning practices here in training camp. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Kevin and Query. Again, we'll be out there tomorrow. Saturday and Sunday, we've got practices as well. Everybody have a great Wednesday.